It was a legit ban for sure. Like I've told people,
Okay.
Fair enough. It's worth
Jesus.
establishing. Yeah,
Respect.
it's worth establishing. You know.
Respect.
so I've,
Yeah,
I've
fair
told
enough.
people
Own it.
like things that I shouldn't have, and
Okay.
honestly, like it's some kind of a syndrome that some gamers have that I might have had, that you like don't realize you're actually playing with human beings, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
It's
Yeah, no,
gonna-
we all do it. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that since I play in North America, a lot of the time I'm not. So it's, it's. I mean, I guess that part is debatable, but yeah, you can continue with your point.
So for sure, like the ban was legitimate, and it made me reflect upon myself as a person a lot. You know, like at the time I was 20 years, so I definitely have changed a lot from this experience. I think I matured myself, and it was just, I don't know, like first few months were like kind of like hopeless and a bit depressing, because at one hand I had like all this time that I put into League previously, right? Like I've played League like a lot for like the last 5 years. So like on one hand I was like, should I still keep going? Well, like since I've already put this much time in, should I still like try, you know? And then I had like all these doubts that like maybe I should let it go, that teams won't want to play with me because I will be considered toxic. And I just want to like clarify that, you know, although I have been toxic in solo queue, like a lot back then, I was never actually a toxic teammate, you know, and anyone who I've played with could have like, you know, agreed to that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I was like kind of hopeless, but then I was like, you know, whatever. Like there's this Corona thing happening also, that I'll just spam a lot of solo queue, and that's what I did. Then I got like rank 1 like pretty early into the season, and I stayed there for like 2 weeks, and then this Forgiven drama happened, right? And I got like a glimmer of hope that maybe things will actually work out in the end, and they did. So for me, it's kind of like a miracle, you know. Like I didn't think much of my career.
Did you know it was bad? Did you know it was bad the second that you were told by your manager, like, "Hey, you've got a call with Riot," or did you go in there completely like unassuming?
Okay, so I have already had like an assumption, because after Summer Split that year, I already had like a warning from Riot that like, yeah, I was a bit toxic, so I had a warning. And then for many months I actually watched myself, but there was just like this bad week that I had in December where I just flamed like every game, and I had like a huge tilt loss streak, so I just flamed a lot, you know, and said things that I shouldn't have.
So it's preseason's fault is what I'm getting from this, you know? Like if it wasn't in those preseason like terrible games, you wouldn't actually have lost it to that degree. I mean, I feel like that's actually a really tough time for pro players anyway, like around November and December, because if you want to like put in time and develop yourself, it feels like there's not really an environment to do it, right? Like you can't play scrims. Solo queue is a fucking mess. Like you're trying to adapt to the new items, but it's hard for you to tell how good things are, because
also, let's face it, think about how many people we all know in the scene who are managers, coaches, who don't, listen, I get it, they don't have time to watch everyone in solo queue, so they just look at your win rate. So if you start out the off season and you want to have this like 90% win rate, and someone fucks up the first 5 games in a row, you're going to be on tilt. It's totally understandable. Like your entire job for the next year might rely on that next 2 weeks, and
actually, I have a bit of a story, so
go for it.
So it's regarding my ban. Okay, I have not disclosed this yet, but it's I don't know. It's like stupid and funny at the same time, but I'll just say it.
Okay.
So we all know that this like there's a lot of Turkish people on the US server, right?
Yeah, Turkish transfers.
And sometimes they're associated with like being the inters and the griefers.
Sure.
And I think what actually triggered my ban. Okay, so a little like a fact, like one of the Riot referees here in Europe is of the Turkish nationality, I think. And I actually had one game in particular where I had like an autofilled jungler on mid lane, and he was playing Draven mid. And this guy was like, ever since Champ Select, he was copy pasta spamming this exact sentence. Type 1 if you hate Turks, all in caps. He was just spamming this. Then we just went into the game, and that guy legit runs it down with Draven into the enemy turret, and he's making sure that we all know that he's Turkish. So, and he's like talking. He's like talking to the other players, you know, and I'm so stupid, and I like take this bait and I like start writing to him, and I call him, I think I called him Turkish ape or something like this, you know. I mean, I'm pretty sure I did call him that, which was like really inappropriate, right? Because it has the connection of those two things.
Basically, listen, I know this fully well, but I would just say this to any pro players out there. I've said this because Dom does it as well. Like, they all love to call people monkeys in the game, right? But the one problem is this, is like, There's got to be some point in time where almost every nationality derogatorily has been called a monkey. So the problem is, as soon as you say that, like, just pick a different insult, basically. Like, we could just call them an idiot or something. Because if you say anything related to monkey,
that's why people don't go for animals. I mean,
insult.
TF Blade got banned for saying Turkish dogs from on Twitch.
True.
So this is why you just don't even go for an exact animal. You just say, this player not human, like doesn't have hands, something like that. You know, like
okay.
you just go for
That's
something
not
like
bad.
you don't go for a nationality and then an insult.
Yes.
It's just like, oh, this is not a human being that we're playing with right here. So. Man, but I mean, I completely like understand where the frustration
That's
comes
one thing
from.
I've always thought. It's one thing I've always thought was pretty unfair about the way that they actually adjudicate those bans and like do the rulings. Is they don't appear to actually do what a real court case would do, which is you ask like, well, what were the circumstances that led to this situation? They just go, oh, pro player at the end said something mean, ban him.
Yeah.
So, like we're not robots, you know. Like these are human beings. Like if people play the game enough, a lot of people are going to have a week where they write some stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's actually another thing that actually I think triggered like started the investigation on me and my behavior, right? So I was playing a game, and the enemy team had my team. I had like a Spanish pro player, and back at the time he was playing for Excel, I think. I won't call him out by his name, but basically he was on my team, right?
Yep.
And I didn't write anything the entire game, and he was inting by himself. At one point, he leaves the game, and as he's disconnected from the game, I call him an ape in all chat to the enemy team, you know?
Yeah.
and then someone from the enemy team takes a picture of that, sends it to the player who had rage quitted the game, and the player who had rage quitted the game goes to Riot with this picture.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I just feel like it's a really slippery slope because there's going to be also a lot of people that are trying to like trigger you. I mean, I've even seen it recently because I just got unbanned from coach streaming recently, and you can tell people are just like, oh man, like how funny would it be if I got
They
like
got in for you now.
I know where all my eggs lie right now. You know, like I'm not a solo queue streamer anymore. I mainly do like analytical content and stuff like that. So you can say whatever you want to me in solo queue.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna.
I mean, it's really like this, that if you play like in LAC, that people just like love to try and trigger you, you know? They like sometimes try their hardest to like try and trigger you, and God, man, I'm so stupid, but I like often fall for this, you know?
No, what people don't realize is like that is a real phenomenon. What you're describing there, I've heard all the people I know who got banned, Nuke Dog, Forgiven, all the same happened to them. Which is, look, if you're someone who believes that you should be banned if you say toxic things, listen, those people could all have been banned. That's totally fine. But what no one ever acknowledges is this. Let's say they would, under other circumstances, have done the toxic thing 1 out of 10 times. If you ever looked into when these people got famous that they'd already been warned or had a ban or people knew they say stuff, I'm not joking, mate. They would be having like 3 out of every 10 games would be someone else trying to trigger them, like going at like feeding on purpose or like up your jungle clear or something, or just typing stuff that's like up to the line but never goes over it, because again they have nothing to lose. And that's probably the wackest thing I think about the whole solo queue.
Well, they should have something to lose, right? Like they should be able to like lose their privilege to play.
I mean, they're
right?
not a pro play, you know.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You know, they think they can come back on an alt. Like the thing I can't handle is this. I get it if Riot goes, well, you know, we're gonna not allow this behavior or whatever, or if the person who themselves got flamed reports, that's one thing. But what is this like bullshit hall monitor behavior where people are just like going out of their way to try and like entrap people on solo queue? It is a game, for fuck's sake. Like, how whack is that? Yeah. Like Promiisq, I wouldn't want my worst enemy banned in the game. Why would you? It's just whack. Like, I agree. If you're going to be a professional player, then we can start to have a discussion about, you know, like what does it reflect on sponsors and stuff. That's a different discussion, though. Like, I think it's so whack that people like want to get other people banned in the game. That just sucks.
Yeah, definitely sucks. One thing I wanted to ask you about the time where you were grinding there, did you feel like your spot was in jeopardy, or were you like grinding to try to like get on another team? What was your mentality towards grinding so much solo queue in the off season? Like, did you feel secure in your spot on Misfits? Did you think that it was just gonna like be something where you needed to get to another team? Was that part of the reason why you were like you know, being more like toxic, was because you were kind of tryharding for your life, so to speak?
I mean, kind of, but like honestly, like a lot of times this actually happens in off-season, that you're like signed to a team, right? But that team has like the ability to let you go, but also to keep working with you. And like ultimately you're like left hanging where you don't know if you're gonna play for them. And where like the options are like closing, you know? So you need to like know real fast. And this was one of the things that bothered me that off season, is that I didn't know where the Wizards wanted to keep with me, which in the end they did. But then this happened, so it didn't happen. But I didn't know if I was gonna play for them, But I also was on a contract with them, so it's like they could kind of jail me and they then release me, And this is like in general one of the like bad things that pro players have to experience in off season. But I wouldn't say that I was frustrated or to a point where I would flame in solo queue because of this in particular,
Don't you think you got done a bit dirty though by Misfits? Like, listen, I don't know what your feelings about the org are, but like, you barely got to play. You were on the team that won the EU Masters. You only played a few games. I thought you were pretty decent in most of them. It definitely wasn't your fault you lost the games.
Yeah,
and as far as I can remember, the only incident you ever even had, I don't think people were even flaming it. It was just that one stupid thing where you misclicked the buy or whatever. Like I thought it was wild. Like, I get it, right? If someone comes up as a rookie and they're just bad for a whole year, and people are like, right, I'm not going to gamble on that guy. But you haven't even had much of a chance.
Let's get this straight. I did not misclick. It was a bug. I stand by this till this day.
Okay.
Let's get that done first. And I mean, I think Misfits is a very good org. Like, they treated me very well as a player when I was on their team. Obviously, this academy roster swaps, they were a bit weird, so to speak, But I'm happy they gave me the chance. And to be honest, back then, I wasn't as good as I am now. I wasn't that good. So like, I understood if they didn't want to keep me for their LEC team. I was really fine going and playing academy for them, which is what I wanted. And we built a really good roster in academy that I felt like we would win the whole national league with.
Was that the one with Leader and them, or was this after?
No. We were okay. So basically, me and Leader Leader was in a similar position as me regarding to whether he's gonna stay or not. But basically, we were gonna try and have me, Leader, and Kirei as a core of the team. And then have other people. But I was really confident with this roster to go to National League and win it all. But then my ban happened and Leader got also laid off.
Yeah.
So there's that. But I don't know. It's kind of hard to say because I know how orgs think. Like, for them, it's business in the end, right? And like, they sometimes have to make decisions, and they were changing a lot when it comes to their management. So I can understand why things took a bit more time than they have, than they usually should take.
Yeah, happens. One thing I wanted to ask about that as well would just be when you were with Misfits, like you came in through the regional league. I think it was that French league at the time that you were playing in?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, so you're playing in French league, and I assume that like those types of contracts are a lot different. So did you actually have like a proper like contract that was negotiated with an agent, or did you just kind of like find a team and they're like, hey, you just want to play National League so bad you'll sign whatever? Like, did you have like a full support system there when
oh yeah, basically. So like back then the academies were not like, all the teams needed an academy, and it was like the first year where like all the academies were required, right?
Yep.
So like how the contract works is you usually have the academy part, and then you also have a clause for promoting to LEC and how your salary works there and all this stuff, so this was all pre-negotiated, and my contract was fine, It's just that some teams have like a clause that allows them to like drop off their players at any point, and Misfits was like one of those orgs, So that was like my only thing that I had an issue with in the contract.
Makes sense.
It's like you basically like aren't really guaranteed your spot,
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of how all. I feel like that's kind of how all the contracts are these days, where it's just like, hey, like we reserve the right to, kick you at any time,
actually,
for any reason.
Actually, in LEC, I don't think it's like this anymore. I think, according to the German law, you like cannot like kick someone and not pay them, So you at least have to like pay them in full.
Oh, interesting.
In Germany.
As far as I know, isn't it something along the lines of like, so that you can't just kick people for like no reason whatsoever from your job or something? So I think so you can't just be like shit canned and a week later you've got no job whatsoever. It's something along those lines. I think is like the reason why. There's like a logic to it, I sort of get it.
Yeah, I mean it's the German law, I think, that doesn't allow you to do this. Yeah, right. But back then I was under Misfits, and they are an American org,
right?
So that was a bit different. But yeah, I mean the academy back then, I was really like happy with being in there and playing, and the contract was really good for what it was back in the days.
Yeah. So during this period where you were banned, so it was about from like end of December until like early March that you were serving your ban. What was your plan before the Forgiven thing happened? I know you alluded to the fact that you were you were just kind of like grinding solo queue and you thought you might quit. What was the point
Right.
like where you actually decided to keep on going? And if the Forgiven thing wouldn't have happened, would you have stayed in that mindset of potentially quitting or potentially like not joining, or were you just set on going back to regional league if you had to?
No, so my point back then was that like the year has already started, and like there is a high chance that at least some teams in Europe will look to make a change, and possibly on the AD carry role. And I will probably get a shot after the spring split, would be my like first option to join a new team, or after summer split to join a new team for next season, right? So I wanted to play till these 2 dates and see what kind of offers I get, and then I would decide again. But basically, like I was fine with like dropping league if I wasn't able to find a good team within that year for the next season, you know. So my goal was basically already to focus on the next season, but you know things happened, and I came back in the very split. So
Yeah.
You'd be fine just dropping it completely. Like if you hadn't made it to LEC this year, you just say all those years of League of Legends, throw that in the bin. I'm just going to go do something completely different. You wouldn't keep it one more year.
No, I do believe that like I'm like a very hardworking person, right? And I have big ambitions from like myself, I would say. So like to me, if I cannot make it back within a year, like what guarantees me that I like the next year it will happen, you know? Especially when like there's a lot of new players coming up, and people always like prefer to like give the chance to someone who's like not proven, you know, over someone who's been there.
In
and,
LEC
like,
for sure, I agree with that.
yeah, and I just didn't want to go through the hassle of playing in National League for a couple of years and then quitting, you know, when I'm like this young. So
Well,
I was just gonna like,
who knows, man? Promiisq was playing National League until he was like 26, and he got back into LEC this year, so it can
Some
happen.
would say probably should still be playing National League right now. Some would say it looks like he is playing National League right now, except for on the other side of the server when he's in it. So give me a break. Mate, I've never understood that. One thing I'll never understand, maybe it's my superpower or my defect as a human, is because you like someone, why do you have to pretend they're good at the game? I'll never understand that. I'll never understand it. It would be like saying, oh, do you like your dad? Yeah.
to be honest,
be challenger then. Like, what?
to be honest, I will go here and defend Promiisq's name. He
Okay.
is not that as bad as people think he is. Like, I don't know, like there's this kind of a stigma about people who like really like hate on him for being around for so long, you know? But the thing is, when you play against him, you know that in lane, he's a good player and he can play it well. And it's just that there's just no one better to like replace him, you know? Like that's what it really feels like. So like,
do you really believe that?
time...
Because I mean, we've heard of a lot of people in national leagues getting hyped, like Targamas, and then people talk about Steelback, and like I mean, even Yellowstar, like at least Yellowstar is the tenure and maybe has the upside of like he could potentially, you know, do something for your team in terms of like shot calling or something like that. Do you really believe that there's no one better than him right now?
I'm not sure. That is my honest answer. I just know that for laning against him, I laned against him in Academy and I laid against him in LEC scrims. I do not think he's a bad player as an individual. Maybe as a teammate, there's like issues that he has with his team. Maybe his team is just hinting him, you know. We'll never probably know the entire truth, but I think he gets way more hate than he deserves, you know.
Right, so there's 10 supports playing LEC Neon, right? What number would he be? Number 1 is the best, number 10 is the worst. What number would he be?
Number 1 is the best, number 10 is the worst.
Yeah,
you know how numbers work, mate. This is a nice delay tactic, but you're going to have to answer the question eventually, so go on.
I'd probably say 7-6 maybe. But I don't want to get too much into detail here. Okay?
Listen, I'll give you respect that you at least put a number on it. Because the problem I have is this. If you'd said 10, then that invalidates everything you say. Because the point isn't that I don't know if people actually hate him. Maybe people on Reddit do because it's like a meme or whatever. But I think most people just think he isn't LEC quality. So if you think he is, fair enough. But I'm quite shocked by that because, mate, half the people you've played with in your career can't get in the fucking LEC. Like, what, your boy Heaver's not as good as Promiisq. What is DOS complete trash, is he, mate? Like, these people can't even get an LEC spot. So it's not about just giving spots away because people are nice guys and they're not bad. Like, they have to actually be good.
Yeah, but you guys also have to take into consideration this, right? So prior to this year, Promiisq in LEC, he was playing in Academy. I mean, in the Prime League, the German League.
Yeah, German League with Leader and just.
To be honest, him and Jeskla were like the best bot lane in that league by far.
I believe it.
Yep.
So like, if I'm a team like Astralis and I'm like looking at bot lanes, then I will want this bot lane, you know, because like in that league, which was considered probably the best last year, they were the best, you know, like they were just simply the best in the league. So like, You know, I understand the decision why he's playing, and I do think if you're the best in a national league for an entire year, you deserve a shot in LEC. Like that's just what it is, you know.
Yeah, I can see that. I feel like maybe it also comes down to like what you value about him, because you keep on talking about his lane phase, which I do think that he does like get advantages in some lanes. The problem is that I feel like he throws every single game outside of lane to like the point where I don't care what you're doing in lane, you can't make up for what the fuck you did in mid game.
Yeah, well, that is also like that's probably like his biggest weakness, right? It's like
Inting the whole game for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, like getting caught because you're too over aggressive. Like there's like a very thin line between being good and just inting, you know.
Yep.
And that's when some of these best players like sometimes make plays and they look like bronze players because they were like
hilly.
They were like on such a thin ice that it just broke, you know. And that's how it works in the highest level with League. Like sometimes you just like flip it, you know, and see where it goes from there.
This guy's doing a really fucking good job, Dom, just trying to completely like 180 his entire reputation. No, I am now the voice of the voiceless. I think Promiisq was a very good player. Like, oh, man, we get the point. There's no over egg the pudding.
I respect it, because I mean, for me, I just couldn't put him up there with all the supports that you have. Like you have, I mean, maybe now, like, I mean, Kaiser, I put respect on Kaiser, Hillesong, Vander, you got Mickey. Yeah, like all those. And then, Limit. So that's already your top 5. Like those people are untouchable. So then when you get into 6 and 7, like I would take people like Lebrov over him. I think Torres showed more than him. So, I mean, I would personally have him, towards the end. Maybe I would give him over Trimby, because I feel like Trimby has really been running it down in LEC, but I can't go much higher than that just because of his weaknesses outside of lane. Speaking about supports,
fair enough, though. He did a good job defending. Like, he gave a different angle.
No, I respect it.
Just good in the scrims. Like, at least you had a reason why. So fair enough.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'd much prefer that to people that just come on the show and they'll be like, "Yo, no, he's just really good. Why is he really good? I don't know why he's really good. Like, you tell me why he's really good." It's like, what the fuck? Like, I didn't say that shit. You're the one that said it. So, definitely respect for giving some perspective on that. Oh yeah, Treats has also been smurfing. I mean, if you start looking at these names, I feel like then it becomes pretty hard to put him like past like 9th or 10th. But either way, back to the point that we were on. So when you got the spot from Forgiven, or like you were originally put into like the National League version of Schalke, which I believe is the German league. Schalke Evolution was the German league. So.
People are lost, by the way. The story basically went like this. Obviously, Forgiven was the LEC player.
Yeah, and then he gets kicked.
Inax was the German league player, like you're saying. And then obviously when they kicked Forgiven, there was no Neon yet. So they just moved Inax up, and then Inax took Neon took the spot of Inax, and then eventually he then replaced Inax, if people don't. So it's a bit convoluted, but yeah.
So essentially Forgiven getting kicked from the team or leaving whatever was what gave you the spot. Were you just gonna play LEC regardless? Were you like, hey, this is like the best chance for me to get back into LEC? Or were you kind of, thinking about, hey, what's the best team? Am I gonna look good enough if I'm on Schalke? Or was it just, hey, get into LEC at all costs? Because I mean, at that time Schalke was looking pretty doomed.
Yeah, well, it was like kind of a godsend, that Forgiven did this, and I'm really thankful for like him stepping down. So I want to say thank you. And I mean, it was like a tough decision, because I knew that if I came to Schalke, I would probably compete for a LEC spot at one point or another, right? But then I wasn't sure about the team, but I was like, well, hey, this might be the best chance you will ever get, so I just went for it.
By the way, if people don't know, because we referenced this on the Odoamne episode, but it might have gotten lost for some people. Another detail a lot of people don't know about that story is that the whole reason Forgiven made that really bizarrely like phrased twit longer is because he actually wasn't fired from the team at that point in time. They hadn't told him like you're benched permanently or whatever. I believe they told him something initially like you're benched for this split, but you can compete for the spot again in the summer or something. So basically, there would have never been Neon either if Forgiven just didn't basically rage quit the fucking team, as far as I can tell. So it's actually not as simple as people realize. So the other thing I want to ask is this, though. You basically did the opposite of what Forgiven did, which is one of the reasons why a lot of the people who even like him were really disappointed with his behavior that year. It's because we all knew that there could be problems in a team like Schalke. Like, we didn't expect him to be the best team in the LEC, but our thought was, right, you haven't played competitively like in LEC level, forget fucking EU Masters. Like, you haven't played for basically like 3 years, dude. Like, you have to come back and you have to, you know, pay your dues. You have to show, even if it's a bad team, I can handle losing. I'm a good player. Like, I can help people improve. So, like, the reason why I bring this up, right, is I know one of the reasons he rage quit is because he couldn't handle people thinking he's shit because the team was losing every game. Like, he couldn't handle any of the things we set up like that. So, even though you obviously weren't in LEC, it's still a massive gamble to come into a team like that, mate. Like, obviously, that team itself went on a massive losing streak. Like, you saw what happened in Misfits. Like, if that had gone badly, that split, if you don't turn it around, that miracle split, you'd probably never play in LEC again, right? It'd be pretty hard to reverse it, I think.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty big gamble to do that.
It was for sure. I mean, part of the reason why like Forgiven struggled a lot, I think, is that like back when he was in LEC, like there was 2 new champions, Aphelios and Senna, and both were extremely OP. And for some reason, he just could not play them. And it was really hard for the team to like work around this like thing in the draft, you know. So like I think that was like one of the main reasons why the team struggled so hard in the start. And then like at one point, if you just keep losing, then you know things happen and people blow up, and that's what happened.
Yeah, I think that's always been something that people thought might be an issue with Forgiven, but it was never actually as apparent as when Senna Aphelios came out, because the other champion that he famously never would play against would be Kalista. Kalista, he would never play, and he would just like have his counters to it, but he just would never play Kalista back in like season 5, season 6, when Kalista was considered, you know, B1, like first pick of the overall draft, people would go Kalista because it was considered that OP. So I think people always worried about this, but definitely the Senna Aphelios issue definitely like didn't come out, and he played some Senna in LEC, but it just didn't go well. I was wondering if you like what your opinion of Forgiven as a player just is, knowing that like he played in the team. Were you watching? Do you still think that he has what it takes to potentially play within LEC from just a skill level?
Well, I'm not too sure about that. Like, I have a huge respect for Forgiven, for like how good he was compared to other people back in the days. But like right now, it's just really hard for him to keep up. I think like there's new champs and the game changes a lot, and he was just like, to me, it seems like he was really stubborn about how the game should be played and how he should be played around, and he just cannot really like adapt, you know. And that's what League of Legends is about. Is now like nowadays about, right? Just being able to adapt and like learning new play styles, learning new champs, and I think ultimately he just wasn't able to do this, you know.
Yeah.
Right. Since obviously his style of play that is super famous is like the Uzi, like hard, you just fucking basically try and smash your lane, and it's just like even if you lose the game, you're like, but I was up 40 CS. It's like one of those ones, right? Is that actually, do you think that's even a viable thing in League of Legends anymore? Because it does feel like the last few years have been all about like support to roam in, fucking skirmishing 24/7. Can you actually be lane dominant as ADC, do you think?
I mean, you can, but it really depends on the draft. Like, it primarily depends on the draft. Like, Forgiven's play style used to be, he would push every single wave, starting level 1, he would just hard push, and he would keep doing this, you know? And God forbid enemy jungler comes, you know? But like nowadays you can't do this. Like nowadays you get map splitted, you need to play weak side, you know. If draft allows enemy to map split and they map split, you need to play weak side, and you need to do your best to not push and not die, you know. And that's just something that Forgiven couldn't do. Like I've heard stories about how people like map split on him, and if you map split you cannot push at all. And he would just like hard push the first wave, and then guess what? Enemy jungler comes because it's a map split.
And then you talk about playing 2v3. So
yeah, exactly. Like all these kinds of things, like unfortunately the game has changed, and you need to be really versatile like on every lane. So you need to be able to play both sides, and whether that be like strong side or like playing aggressive, or be that weak side and like playing safe.
Yeah. Did you, since you're a player that came up recently, but you were most likely just grinding League. I mean, I think I saw in your history that you'd been playing on amateur teams as far back as like 2015. So when you were doing this grind, when you're trying to, you know, make a name for yourself within, you know, the amateur circuit, and moving up to regional leagues, get into LEC, all that stuff, was there any type of player or any AD carry specifically from LEC that you played against, or like a lot in solo queue, and that you had a lot of respect for, somebody that you had respect for from obviously just like watching LEC? Were you like a reckless type guy, a Sven type guy? Did you have like somebody who you really respected?
I mean, not really, because I didn't like watch pro play too much back at the time. Like I just really enjoyed League of Legends, and I really enjoyed the competitive aspect of it, and hence is why I played in like a lot of amateur teams when I was at high school. I just really enjoyed it, you know. And I started out playing a lot of Czech lands,
You must have
like,
played a bunch against Freeze then, right?
yeah, and the fun fact is that like I faced all these people in Checklands. Like I played against Humanoid,
Humanoid, all
Sherry,
of them. Yeah, of course. Denik,
Sherry,
I'm sure.
Karzy, Danik, and Freeze. Like all these people I like used to play on those lads on like regular basis. So it's like kind of funny to see how like far we've
Sure.
come
Yeah.
altogether.
Yeah, people don't know Humanoid was his mid laner like 4 or 5 years ago at this point in time, like ages before they were all in LEC.
That's always so crazy to hear about, like all these people that kind of like grew up in the same area. Like
it's kind of cool though, isn't it? Because think about this, Dom. Whenever we hear people complain about like the scene in America, there's one thing you just don't have. Like you can't compare Academy to the amount of lands that there were. I mean, I know there's no lands now, but like most of the players who we call rookies now have played like 15 lands or something. Like they actually have legit experience. Like I feel bad for the NA players in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Slovenia, right? And like you had like Mickey X and Nemesis and Crown Shot all playing versus each other. And you know, you even looked at all the rosters and it's like, damn, like this team could legitimately have like been an LEC team. I mean, I think they had a top laner that was I forget what his name was, but I think he played for Rocat back in the day. So they've had quite a few players go through these leagues. But I saw you wanted to jump in and say something, Neon. So
yeah, I actually wanted to touch on the LAN thing. Like back in the days, like I think that's also what kind of got me into like competitive gaming is that like my first LAN event, right? Like I have never like really gone outside and met with people who play League or like play any video games. So my first LAN event, I just come to like a huge building and then there's this like huge area just filled with computers and everyone's just like playing and competing and I could like really feel the competition there, you know, and like it was just really epic. And that's what I kind of miss like nowadays. Like sure there's LEC, but besides LEC and like Worlds, there's not like an actual like tournament where you like go and face the enemy like somewhere else, you know. I've played like so many LANs and this is like a feeling that I really miss. And like I guess you were comparing like this to NA. Yeah, I mean, I think this is like one of the things that like give you drive to like want to compete because it's just like ultimately so much more fun this way.
Mm-hmm. How big were these LANs? Like, did you have like fans and stuff? Did you sign autographs and all that type of stuff? Or?
Oh no! It was like a big like my first LAN was like a big bring your own PC kind of LAN.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
Everybody just brought their PCs and they were like in a huge fucking hall and it was just a crazy experience, you know, because you could just like you could barely move. There was just like PCs everywhere, you know. It was just really funny, I thought. So, and like us competing there against other teams and then handshaking them after like games was just really funny, you know. And I think it's ultimately what got me started.
Yeah. So is that so after these LANs, this is the point where you're just like, yeah, I want to make this my life. Like I want to be an LEC player someday.
I mean, to me, it was always like a goal that was really far away because I didn't really like know if it would be possible, right? So I just like kept playing those LANs, and then at one point, after like I've played, and I was like, I mean, this thing is kind of funny. Like maybe if I am better, like slightly better, I can maybe make it, you know. And from there on, I just went, and it just happened, you know.
Were you already a solo queue beast at this point? Were you in Challenger and everything?
I mean, I was Challenger for like a lot of years now, for like the last 5 or 6, but there's like a huge difference between like solo queue challengers and like real pro players. Like there's so much more to it, you know. So like back then, I was probably like even higher ranked than I am right now, but I was not nearly as good as I am right now, you know. Also.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the drama that's happened recently, the talk, man, I've been asked about it a million times in my chat, is the Vitality roster swap. And I thought you'd be a perfect person to ask about this, right? Because Comp is somebody who I actually thought was a pretty good AD carry player. I mean, I think AD carry in general is a pretty strong role in Europe.
It's got to be one of the best, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's probably the best.
Even role. The people, by the way, who fans don't know, but like Jessica, like he was referring to before, just go watch them in the RLs. They're legit. Like nobody's bad at ADC in Europe right now.
Yeah, no one's bad. So, I mean, I think a lot of people were really surprised knowing that, you know, Comp and Labrov were considered the strength of Vitality. Most people say that their mid jungle is the weakness of the team. And now Comp has been replaced by Crowny, who everyone loves, super popular in the scene. And I just would love to hear your take on this because Vitality have been struggling, admittedly, but, you know, a lot of people wouldn't expect Comp to get replaced like this.
Yeah, so to me, this change, I'll just say it straight up, doesn't make too much sense. I think both Comp and Crown Shot are really good, you know. But like ultimately, I just feel like if you have lost so many games in a row, and you look at the games and you see that I mean, to me, it just doesn't seem like AD carry was the issue of that team, Like, I don't know how it is for communications. I don't know if he talks a lot or if he doesn't talk at all, but like, I think AD carry is probably one of the least impactful roles when it comes to competitive play. Because like I think like if you want to look at why team is doing poorly, I'm first gonna start with like support jungle. Like if everything is working on there, and then you're gonna then you can go over your lanes, And to me, it just didn't seem like the lanes, or the bot lane was the issue of that team,
Yeah, I mean the thing that they're citing is the communication that CrownShot brings. They're like, oh, we need like more of a voice, more direction, more leadership. But
which is hilarious, by the way, because I don't know if he said this to you or not, Dom, but I'm pretty sure in my interview with him, he even implied that, like, he wasn't like running the team or something. That he was just like another player in SK. So like that angle's a weird. That's why that whole thing doesn't add up to me. The fact that they like specifically made it about that he needs to be a veteran and a shot call. Like just say the other guy's benched, or he's not playing well, he's got attitude issues. Like it feels like they've just left it intentionally vague for some reason. Like if anything, people are probably going to read more into it. Like now, people, I'm assuming most people who aren't in LEC just assume this guy's toxic now, or just a bad teammate or something,
Yeah, and to be honest, like to me, that change is like way too early in the season, and like so now let's say Vitality like turns it around, then it's like pretty bad for comp, right? And like really good for CrownShot, even though there might not be that big of a discrepancy in between them. So like it's just kind of a weird change for me, Like,
well, even though I agree with your point, I will just say, just for the context, you did replace Inax after 3 games, so just gonna put that out there, mate. I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, but to be honest, like you could see when you look at Schalke games that the first 3 games they played, like bot lane was a huge issue, from the get-go.
Yeah, of course.
So.
Yeah,
it's a different scenario.
And that's different. I mean, the other thing that I would like to add for some context is also the strength of schedule. Like, so Vitality, in the first round robin, the first 9 games that you play, they're currently 1-6, right? And they've already played all their good teams. So next week is the week where I think they have like 2 winnable games. I believe they play like SK and XL or something, but not teams that are supposed to be towards the top of the table. So I feel like it's a weird timing, because if CrownShot comes in and they 2-0 this week, how much does that mean, considering like last week, I think Vitality had to play like Mad and maybe G2. Like they had really hard games last week. So I don't know if this is the time where you'd make the change. I feel like doing it after the first round robin would make a lot more sense. So you could see how they played against every team.
Indeed, I completely agree. Like if next week Vitality wins, like who knows? Like with Com, they might like also have had one, if they played him. But it's just gonna look like Crowny just changed the whole team, and just improved them so drastically,
Yeah.
So I'll tell you what's going to happen right now, Neon. Exactly what you've just said. What's going to happen is they're going to win 2-0 over like some okay teams, right? And then the LEC casters are going to just go back into soundboard mode that they've all been in for fucking 10 years, where they go, and Vitality bounces back with a 2-0 week, fixing all their problems against completely different players. Like, and I'll be like, right, when does the fucking world start again? I don't know if I can handle another year of this. Like, that's definitely what will happen, of course.
Do you have an overall take on Vitality right now? Because I think that most people expected a lot more from this team. I mean, when you look at the team in general, it seems like it's 5 solid players. I mean, Comp and Brav were considered a strong bot lane. Sagenda, really hyped rookie coming in. And then Skeens looked more promising in summer for sure than he did in spring. Melitza had a lot of hype as well. Why do you think that the team is struggling so hard with this roster?
I mean, first of all, I want to say that I think they're actually a very decent roster. Like they were with Comp, and I think honestly, like they've just had some really unlucky games. Like even against us, I they should have won that game, So like maybe if they didn't just throw that game, then maybe now they wouldn't have had like.
How much did you have to PayPal Melitza to not go on you there when it was a 2v5 situation? He's back during the base. Come on, like what is his PayPal looking like? Using that Schalke
exactly
money?
What I'm talking about. Like if I look at the game, I just see that they played well, and that game it was won for them. So it's just unlucky, Like let's just play out at least half of the split before we make any rash decisions. So I don't know. It's really weird, But we're gonna have to wait and see. Like,
yeah, I actually had I made a pretty hot take last week about Vitality were they were 1-4, and what I said was I think they're going to be 1-6, but I still think that they're probably going to make playoffs. So essentially, I think that they're the 6th best team. I think top 5 for sure are you guys, Fnatic, Mad Lions, G2, and Rogue. No particular order. I just think those are the top 5 teams. And then when I look at all the other teams, when I look at SK's roster, when I look at XL, Astralis, yeah, I just don't think that there's a better team there than Vitality. I feel like Vitality should be the team that ends up making playoffs. Do you think there's a chance that they make a run, they make a Schalke-esque run and end up making playoffs?
I mean, I think that this year there's a huge number of teams that are very close in like skill. So I think like definitely any kind of like a comeback story, like miracle run can happen again, like for a lot of teams, not just Vitality, you know. So like I'm really sure that anything can happen still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thorn, do you think what's your take on Vitality as well? Do you think that they potentially make the run? They like, bring it back from 1-6?
The problem is like I don't think with like it's very, very, very rare in my opinion. I know Schalke did it last year, and obviously Fnatic did it like 2 years ago or whatever. It's super rare you do a massive streak like that, because like you saw with the Schalke one, you usually have to do like, in the same way as you have a massive losing streak, you have to count that with a massive winning streak. Like what people forget when you're in a situation like 1-6 is, like off the top of my head, I think you have to win something like you probably have to win like 7 games, don't you? So like you don't just have to be good. You basically have to do a complete 180 and become like one of the best teams in the whole league, and probably along the way beat someone like a G2, Rogue. Like you're gonna have to beat someone. You can't just give up these games for free. So unfortunately, right now, probably not. I do think though that something has gone only slightly wrong in that team, though, because I agree. I actually thought in the off-season, it's not a bad lineup, actually. I know a lot of these players don't have big names, but like I thought this team should be a playoff team, certainly, maybe 5th or 6th best squad. I know that actually one of the reasons they probably didn't get the best players is people probably know from some of the off-season rumors. Yep. They were one of the teams that not only could they have gotten perks, but they were supposed to be a team that could have potentially made like a fucking super team. Yeah, exactly. So I actually think, if anything, they could have been in an even better position this year. So considering they didn't get any of those big signings, they did a pretty good job still signing a good lineup of players. Like Segenda was definitely one of the better ERL players. I have my questions about Skeens, but then again, the jungle position in their team was fucked for the last year and a half. So fair enough, and give them another chance. But no, I find it underwhelming because I don't really like. Put it this way: when we were talking before, there, like if you look at the team, which players are playing badly, it's hard to tell. Like I don't think there's an obvious person who sucks on this team.
I feel like it's just like a part of the game that they struggle with. So like their mid jungle seems to just not be doing things that other mid jungle duos are doing. And also, like, it seems like kind of everyone's operating themselves. Like, it feels like Comp and LeBrav operate as Comp and LeBrav. But when you look at other teams, right, like, you see more movement from the support and more synergy between support and jungle. Like, for example, when I'm looking at Schalke, you know, I just think about how many plays Limit is making and, like, how people are playing around, like, Gilius' jungle pathing and things like that. I don't see that out of Vitality. I don't see that synergy there.
To me, it also seems like they're not bad individually, but they just lack like a strong voice, like leadership, you know. And maybe that's why they're like getting Crowny and saying, "Yeah, we're getting him because of how strong of a voice he is," you know. So I mean, maybe that's just the issue, that they don't like have a strong voice, or they're like not really sure.
Do you think it's possible from AD carry? Because I feel like AD carries, it's going to be really hard to like. If your problem is mid jungle in early game, I feel like it's really hard for an AD carry to be like, hey, this is the play we need to be doing on the map. Yeah, like we should be diving top here, like you know, micromanaging LeBrav. I mean, can you leave me now? Like I feel like it doesn't make sense from the position.
For me, it's personally very hard, and I don't think like AD carry can really do this consistently. Like I just feel like it needs to be like either support or jungle to have this strong voice, because they impact the other lanes most, and they most likely have like engage and all these kinds of things. So I really don't think AD carry is suited to be this kind of a player in the team.
The stupid thing is, I do think there's a logical part in the game where anyone who is a good AD carry, I'm like talking not like the guy who's just the worst player on the team and you give him the shit champions, like someone who's considered a good AD carry. In my opinion, the part where they all should have a voice is as soon as they are the most powerful person on the map. Like that's when, in my opinion, you have to have like, you know, some say in the shot. Like, because at that point in time, this is one of the things I actually think someone like Doublelift's a good example of someone who learned this, is if you just play it like, well, the other people are supposed to shot call, and at the end of the game, you're just the guy complaining, like, we didn't do this and this, and I could have done this. It's like, no, in that moment, when you actually are the only one who knows how powerful you are at that moment, and you need people to go to a lane with you, or you need someone to hold a second and not take a fight mid while you fucking side lane or something, like, at that point in time, like, that's where you need to be vocal. Like, that's a responsibility, in my opinion, you know?
I mean, I agree with you, but yeah, that as you said, it should be like this for every role. Like once you're really strong, then you
Agreed.
should know how you want your teammates to play around you. But if you're like if everyone is equal, then you can't really like tell everyone what they should like exactly
sure.
what they should be doing, because it's just it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I feel like the natural progression of things is that like jungle support make most of the decisions in the early game. And then as AD and mid get stronger, you have just more decisions made through AD and mid, because I feel like that's when all of the decisions that are made, like let's say like starting Baron, not starting Baron, it's really hard for a jungler to tell like, okay, so you have this new like Kraken Slayer Ginsu's build on center. Like, how fast do you actually do Baron? Like, I mean, obviously it's going to do Baron faster than old Senna builds will, but it's hard to know exactly how much without playing the champions yourself. So
By the way, that's one of the reasons, Dom. I mean, I pointed out on that episode. It's one of the reasons I don't fuck with the idea that Bjergsen's some really good shot caller. This motherfucker was the star player, owner of the team at the same time, had the biggest voice. Everyone in the team's like, he's a great teammate. I'll listen to anything he tells me. It's like, what in that scenario, to believe he still knows about the game and he's fucking up all these shot calls, you have to just believe that he's like some fucking mad stereotype of a woman. Like, well, I could tell you what's going wrong, but I want you to just guess and know what's going on. Like, give me a break, mate. You could have spoken up anytime you wanted to.
Yeah, I think it's hard though, because I feel like what ended up happening with Bjergsen is he started doing like the first thing I talked about there, like having to talk about the early game and like direct his jungler in the early game more than he probably should. Where I feel like the jungler should be the one that's kind of like directing their mid lane. Like most of these situations that I see happening on the map where it's like 3-man top dives and things like that, I feel like that should be kind of like called by the jungler, like knowing like, hey,
for sure,
like you can drop this wave, you can follow me over here. And I feel like somehow what ended up happening, at least when I talked to Bjergsen, like when I've spoken to him about team dynamic, is it turns out that most of those like map plays are coming from him. He's the one that's telling his jungler like, hey, we can go dive top now. Hey, we can invade this blue buff. So it's like he's almost multitasking too much early on, and it never gets there. And I feel like that's why every jungler ends up looking like TSM, is because just the culture, I think, puts them in a bad spot to begin with. They don't have much of a voice, and then once they start making mistakes, there's no like, okay, like we're gonna teach them. It's kind of like a abandonment type thing where it's like, no, you can't do this. You
scapegoat you basically.
Yeah, it's like you've already failed at this, so we're gonna have somebody else do it. Where they give up on them too quick. Where it's like, dude, it's early in the season, man. Like you can work on these things. You have to have some confidence in your personnel. But
basically, it ties into one thing we've discussed many times on this show, Dom, which is like, if you're a jungler, you have to be able to say no. Because I think basically, I have a philosophy of responsibility. I'll probably do a video on it sometime. I think the same thing applies to the jungler. Like, I don't want to hear junglers tell me like, but you was telling me to come top lane. Well, check what's between your fucking legs and see if there's a pair of balls there and say, no, you idiot. Like, if you go there and it fails, well, then you're an idiot with him, you moron. Like, it's one thing, if later on the coach is like, well, can you do that? Like, that's one thing. But, like, everyone has to have some degree of responsibility. But the point, as we're saying here, is it's appropriate to what's going on in the game. Like, yeah, obviously in the early game, how the fuck would the AD carry know what the jungler's doing on the top side of the map or something? Like, in that moment, it's totally appropriate that the jungler's the guy who makes the call or says what he's doing. But, like, that's the big problem is, I think everyone strawmans the whole shot calling thing. They either make it that there's one guy and it's always just high from season 4 who's like the anime fucking protagonist who's like inside the mecha, like quadrant 5 come around, like almost no one ever existed like that, by the way. There's about 3 people who's high and like 2 people in China or something.
Yeah,
like,
it was high, maybe like
no one else ever exists like that.
Maybe Mata.
Yeah, exactly, like the classic ones.
Yeah.
Or they go the other way, and I always give the example of CLGEU were the worst ever for this. They make it sound like you can play League of Legends and have like debates like when you're a student, like, but is that really what we think? Though, well, I actually disagree. It's like, we're playing the game, someone make a call. Like, they thought you could have like pure democracy where everyone was equal. It's like, obviously both of those are just whack, aren't they? Like, even the one with the high angle, I bet if you actually asked Ty or Matt or these guys, like, wouldn't you have liked like another really good person who could have like called? They'd have said yes, of course. They don't want to do every decision. So like, I think people in general go way too far. The problem is, I am essentially setting up the most difficult scenario, which is everyone should know at what point in the game they should talk and when to give other people agency. But that's obviously going to change every game. It's like a puzzle that's moving. It's like trying to do a Rubik's Cube where the fucking colors are changing on the other side. Yeah, no one's going to get it perfect. But that's half the challenge of being a team, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what your scrimming is supposed to determine. You're supposed to be put in enough situations where you have enough like comfortability and experience with your team to be able to determine, hey, this is like you can kind of sense in a game too. I mean, I don't know how you feel about this, Neon, but I remember like in LCS, like when I was playing, you could tell who was really on that day, like who's smurfing. Like I'm sure you could tell if Gilius is like on one and he's gank every lane. Like there's times where it's just like, all right, like I'm gonna just listen to Gilius here. Like he's got the, you know, he's got the idea. He's playing well right now, and you can just sense when people are like in spots where they're comfortable and confident to like take care of the game. So, yeah, I think that a lot of these teams, they kind of get boxed into certain areas where people don't feel comfortable like overstepping boundaries or something like that, and then you just end up with a completely neutered team at Worlds and you go 0-6. So, you know, it
Put it this way though, I'll bring it back to the topic though, just so we don't go on too big a tangent. Basically, this is what I would say is if we add all together everything we've just said, it doesn't really make plausible sense that the one major problem in Vitality is that the fucking AD carry doesn't shot call the game. Like that, you know what? I'm gonna go false. And I bring out all the fucking memes of that guy from like fucking Star Trek or whatever, where he was like, it was a lie. It was a perfect, like, that was a fabrication. Like, mate, bring all those memes out of that fucking Riker guy. There's no way that could be the reason, is there? Like, I also think as well, except unless you had like some amazing shot caller who was terrible, that's a team job as well. There's no way one guy is up. Well, everyone else is awesome, and then they just need one guy AD carry to do it. Like that sounds to me like, if anything, that's covering someone else's fuck up. Like maybe the jungle doesn't talk or something. You know, I'm speculating purely, of course. I don't actually know, but like that sounds like you're just putting a band-aid on someone else's wound there. So I don't know. It's a bit whack. With that said, though, even though you say it's early in the season, which I sort of get because I don't think comp was bad, like, I also understand why they do it. Like, if you're going to do the Hail Mary, you pretty much have to do it now. You can't wait till there's like 2 games left. Like, they want to, like, the other problem I think, and this is actually maybe a topic we could bring up because it applies to people like you when you're in Misfits, mate. Another factor is everyone knows now this unfortunate trend that you try out the rookie, and unless he is instantly like all LCS, you just fucking fire him and get the next rookie. But the other one people always forget about as well is you bring these guys into LEC, etc., and then even if it's not any of the players' fault, as a manager, I feel like to not get fired, you just put a different player in randomly. And some of these moves, I know behind the scenes they're all going to claim none of win scrims. It was like some of them just don't make sense. Like that one last year where they had that DOS guy from Misfit, I never understood what the fuck that was. Like, what was the premise here? Like, it sounds like you're just doing stuff just so that you don't just get instantly fired and you go, well, I was trying something. It's like that. Some of those, I also think that happens way too much in LCS and LEC. Like this, like, because in my opinion, like I said about the crown shot thing, this is how you do it, and I've no criticism. You just say, look, for how it's going at the moment, I don't think Comp was performing up to par, and I think Crown Shot will be better for us right now. Well, problem solved. There we go. Let's see if he does it. Why have got some weird reason though that like doesn't, you know, it's like fucking convoluted.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like it also comes down to availability, right? Like, out of people that aren't under contract with regional teams, like how many people could they have actually brought up to join their team if they want some change? And the other thing is, like, I mean, that we've referenced, but I would love to ask Neon directly is, what's your value of Comp as a player? Because this guy was one of the better players on Vitality for most people.
Coming into LEC.
He's like rank 1 in solo queue right now. He seems like he's always grinding the game. Like, he seems really mechanically talented. So you've played against the guy. Like, do you see like any glaring weaknesses with him, or you know, do you think he's a really solid player?
I look at him from the viewpoint of like another AD carry and like 2v2 and like how he team fights. I don't see an issue with this guy, you know. And I can't just seem to think that like the way he plays right now, like I think that there is also like an appropriate amount of communication coming from him. This is my assumption, you know. So I don't really know what more Vitality wants of him, but that's just like my view of him. I think he's completely all right, and I didn't really understand the move, just as I said. Yeah,
makes sense. What's your on the other side of it, since we just for like fairness, what's your opinion of Crown Shot as a player? You played against him a lot on SK. He was pretty hyped up.
Well, I also think he's really good and he's able to play well, and like it's just really hard to say because like they put like they like basically the reason they're benching Crown they're benching Comp is because of his communication, since they got Crowny for his communication. So I assume that was his weak part. So maybe it will actually help them, but we will never know, you know. But I think they're both really good, and they're just like trading very similar players, you know.
To be fair, I will say the one area it does make sense in terms of like fucking communications. Have you ever heard Forgiven's accent? Mate, I knew the guy for years and I wanted subtitles. That Greek accent when they speak English is mad. It's so mad. It's not even the pronunciation's all over the place.
I don't even think it's even the pronunciation. I think that it's generally speaking, Greek people speak really fast. Like they speak.
Oh, they do for sure.
They speak super fast, so that it's like it's pretty hard to like decipher if there's accent plus like really fast speaking in there as well. So,
Shall I tell you something mad though? Just as a random aside,
Okay,
like
sure.
that, this is something I actually heard from Richard Lewis, obviously from CS:GO and all that shit there, right? He told me it on his podcast. He used to be friends with a Greek guy, and you know when you're like playing whatever FIFA or like Madden if you're American, you know you're playing your game with your boys, you're all talking shit, right? And so obviously you know you're like, oh, I wrecked you, I'd kick your ass. Whatever. Apparently they have some saying that's popular in Greece, which translates to "I will fuck and tear your asshole," and they actually say that in a fun, light-hearted manner to their friends. Like, because I even said to Richard, mate, it'd be bad enough that it's "I will fuck your asshole." Like, why the tear? Like, why are we like violating?
Yeah, no,
like,
that's
this is just out of control. So all I'm going to say is just think of the Greek people, you know, in esports. Listen, they're fucking wild. They're just a wild people.
Yeah, I mean, I respect it though. Like, I mean, it's just in general, you can tell that they have like, you know, that mindset that you like. I don't know. There's some things that you just notice with like LEC where it feels like people from like almost like harder backgrounds come through and they just have like less like fear, and I feel like that almost might be part of like the reason why NA ends up struggling so much is there's none of that like oh, I gotta make it or everything's over, you know. There's not that like dire like push within you.
It's like the shit in the.
To be amazing.
I mean, this obviously it's not as big a deal now because people get some insane contracts, but that used to be the classic story of the NBA or the NFL. You know, like the idea was the reason that guy goes hard as fuck is because it might be prison or like death for that guy if he doesn't make it. So no, like that's a fucking cool story though if you make it, of course.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's why you got all the Polish junglers, man. All the Polish junglers just seem like just different
That's
breeds.
the position
you know?
right there, isn't it? That's the position, man.
It's kind of true, right? Because like Europe, so many countries, like it makes sense that people are way more competitive, which they are.
Yeah, happens for sure. So we have right now, we got Leader in the chat, and this is somebody who I was gonna bring up because somebody that you played with, right? He's somebody that you played with. He's on your team when you won EU Masters. So this guy didn't end up on an LEC team this year. There was a lot of drama about that. Most people thought he was LEC ready. Then other people have the take that he couldn't play control.
Dude, he has a lot of haters. Have you noticed that, Dom? Like, I know part of it's probably unfortunately, like he has the same problem that some people in CSGO have, which is that if I am known to think someone's underrated in CSGO, it makes people who don't like me hate them. And I'm pretty sure because Veteran hyped him that unfortunately people who don't like Veteran just like hate on Leader or whatever. But like, I get it. Listen, I get it if people are like, I'm a Fnatic fan, I just didn't want him to join. Fine. But I can't believe how many people think he's like not even vaguely LEC level. Like I see so much shit about that guy on Reddit. It's unbelievable. Like they make it sound like he plays one champion and he just 1v9. He's not a fucking Nasus main or something, you know. Like all the champions he plays have even like mad unique matchups that if he actually is as good as he looks like would probably make you like a totally different team. Like I think it's really bizarre when people are like going hard against him. I get the idea he's not the best mid laner, cool, but like people almost like preying on his downfall or something. Like that people think it's like a celebration if he doesn't get an LEC. Like I want all the good players to be in LEC.
Yeah, I think the issue with Leader is just that like a lot of teams view him as a very niche player.
Yeah, niche player.
Mainly
niche,
because niche. Okay, sorry.
No problem.
And that is mainly because of his champion pool. And Leader has like a very specific champion pool that's not really common in like pro play. But I've played with Leader on a lot of teams, or like I've played with him for a while, and I'm his good friend. And the amount of times I've seen this guy like completely just like
it's pop off,
destroy like an LEC mid laner on like their mage with like a very specific like a weird assassin pick is just like it's countless, you know. Like he is really really good on those champs, and there's like very few people in Europe who can match their like his skill on those champs. But on the other hand, he doesn't really play those like typical mages, and that's probably why a lot of teams like kind of shy away from him, you know. So, but I do think he is really fucking good on his champs.
But are you surprised just in general that he's not an LEC? Because considering when you played in Misfits, right? Like he was probably the most hyped player that came out of that matchup, right? You know, like everyone was just like out of that championship, people were just memeing the blue juice, and they're like, give this guy a blue power and he's gonna 1v9 the game. And then like out of your team, it seems like he's the one that has gotten the least amount of like shots.
Yeah, well, I was really surprised that he didn't end up in LEC, and that is because I was really surprised because like in Prime League last year, like he literally stomped everyone, just like his bot lane kind of did. So then you would expect him to play in LEC too, you know, like there's like a lot of people who he had stomped and ended up in LEC, and then he's just like not in LEC, you know. So to me, it didn't really make sense.
Yeah.
I also think it's just like so whack because, like I say, I'm not arguing he should be on Fnatic or G2. That might be a bridge too far. Like I have to see more from him myself. Like you know, he was up and down when he's in LEC. But the reason I find it whack is the same managers who understand the premise of gambling for something that's not certain yet, but if it pays off as a massive upside, that is leader, you fucking morons. Why would I want some guy who's just an Orianna player, who's just going to be a safe mage player? Like, I'm not going to win LEC or go to Worlds doing that. Like, at that point in time, I'm basically just saying, like, cool, maybe we could come 7th. Like, if you pick up leader, here's what's going to happen. You're either going to be, like, a contender or you're going to be trash. So, like, at least you've got, like, a real gamble. Because as fucking Neon says here, like, here's the premise. I'll give people an analogy for people who don't watch ERLs. If everyone remembers, half the reason Whipple was so incredibly hyped after Season 8 Worlds is because it turned out he just bizarrely had been playing fucking Victor top lane, like, forever. And that secretly was, like, the sleeper OP in that tournament. And everyone remembers he just dumpstered, like, Licorice and a bunch of the other top players, right? Well, in that scenario, you can see the value that being insanely good on something off meta is when you know all the matchups. Like, in the same way, like, I know people know the famous ones like Aurelia or whatever, but like, I don't think you understand. In 2020, leader will go and fuck you up on your mid laner who's on a strong mage pick on like Echo, because they're not going to know the matchup. Like, they're going to be like, I've never even played this in competitive, like maybe in solo queue once, you know, like, so like, I think people are mad on, like, I get all of his flaws. They're all legit, but people are overlooking all the upside. There's a load of upside to play that, in my opinion.
Yeah, sure. And I also think the fact that he plays no mages also doesn't make sense to me because I remember him playing a lot of Azir. Like, Azir is one of the mages he can play. And I feel like Azir is one of the best mages you can play because it always finds its way into the meta. Like, how many times do we get to the point where it becomes Azir, Orianna, like Orianna becomes good, and then people start playing Azir into Orianna, and then people just start early picking Azir, and then people play Corki into Azir. It feels like that's like the story of almost every single split of you know, LCS, LEC, LCK, whatever. Like, it just always ends up going down this trajectory. So I feel like maybe people don't give him enough credits for like the mage that he plays. I mean, the main two that I feel like he doesn't play that much of are Syndra and Orianna. And just to speak on the Syndra point, I don't know how you feel about it. I feel like Syndra is one of the biggest.
It was not one of the best champions last year, though.
It was one of the best champions last year. I think it's one of the biggest baits right now in LEC. Like, it feels like every single time you get a Syndra on your team, it is just doomed from the start.
Yeah, but it's been like a signature mid lane champion for like so many years, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So like to not be able to play that champ, like, I guess casts a bad light on you.
Yeah. I mean, I just feel like Syndra always has counters, though. Like, that's the one thing that I'll say is, like, when Syndra becomes popular, then people play Echo into Syndra. And then you can play the other champions into Syndra. Like, if you don't want to play Syndra, you can play Azir into Syndra, and then you're fine. You know, if you play Azir well enough, it doesn't matter. So, I mean, definitely there's issues with it. I just think it's funny that other people from other ERLs are getting the spots before him. Like, a player like Vedia, I would expect to be someone who would have to pay more dues, play more in regional leagues before they get into LEC, because even when I watched him in EU Masters, the whole narrative around him is that he's a Zoe LeBlanc 2-trick. That's what everyone said.
He wasn't considered, like, put it this way, he didn't have the hype that Leader did when he came into LEC. No,
Yeah,
people,
sure.
like as we were saying, people legit thought this guy was going to like take over the fucking league. What about this then, Neon? Do you think actually that obviously the other side he has is people always say that he's like toxic and solo queue or whatever, and I certainly know he has a very like acerbic type of humor. Like even his humor sounds like he's flaming you, even when he's maybe not, you know. So I know that he's one of those people where another classic problem these people run into, which I should have mentioned earlier, is if you're also a player that gets banned, even if you joke to your actual friend, someone else in the game will report you and you will get like violated for that. Like, so that we're talking about ones where it's not even legit. Do you think that actually is in the actual like scene of, you know, managers and teams? Do you think that actually does hold someone like him back? Do you think they worry if he's toxic or he's going to be a bad teammate?
I think that's the other side of the coin of like why teams like don't pick him up. You know, it's just his personality is like for other teams probably like kind of weird, you know, because he was also close to being banned a lot of times, and he what he thinks he will say it, you know, and that's like a thing that in esports like is maybe not always so welcome, you know, like I don't know, I really love his personality, like to me it's really fucking nice, but I think teams are like shining, they're just like trying to not take that risk, you know, because for example last year.
I mean, all I'm saying real quick is just like in the company of players that have received bans, you know, you're not in bad company. You know, Jensen, you know, Mithy, Nuke Duck was good for a bunch of years. You know, I mean, I might have been banned before as well. Like I feel like banned players, you know, maybe they just
shout out my boy Linak from back in the day.
Yeah,
all the good ones, mate, all the good ones. happens.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
those players seem to have the drive.
It's true, but it just creates like a kind of controversy around you as a player, and I think teams
Yes.
really don't want that. Like for example, last year, like Leader played a team in Prime League, and after beating them, he literally flamed every single one of them
Yeah, on
on Twitter. And I was
Twitter.
like,
That's
I love-
hilarious, though. Here's
that
the
was like-
problem, mate.
I love
that was
to be
like the
fair, it is
funniest
'cause I-
thing I've ever heard in esports. Like it was just so fucking funny. But I mean, if I'm like an outsider and I read this, I think like, oh, what an asshole! Like what
Oh,
the
of
fuck?
course.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, I feel like that also has context, right? Like before the match, Agarin, who's on Unicorns of Love, is just had this huge meme, like this screenshot where he had every single player that he played with, all their ELOs, and then he's like, combined, we have like 6,000 ELO amongst us, and then all of you guys, like their LP gains was like half of it. And it's like, look at this team. He's like pretty much calling all the players shit, be like, look at how low rated you guys are in solo queue. So I feel like that's just like normal banter to me. Like you have to, if somebody talks shit to you to that degree, they're bringing up your like fucking solo queue ranks and shitting on you for it on Twitter, shitting on them on the same platform after you destroy them. I don't have that much of a problem with it personally.
Also, let's be real. Like, again, this is about reputation. So the problem that Leader has is not only does he have a rep that he's toxic, but he's also not like a super charismatic guy. So he hasn't really like won people over. I'll tell you right now, Dom, if Bjergsen does the same exact thing in the same context you're talking about, people trash talk him, he plays them, he beats them, he goes, wow, you guys all trash. Like, people would think that was a hilarious story. It'd be like a Michael Jordan story.
But it'd be a one-off.
Wow, isn't that cool?
I think it would be a one-off though for Bjergsen. Like Bjergsen's existed in the scene for so long that I feel like anytime like that, they'd be like, okay, well, if Bjergsen's triggered, he must be correct about the situation. He gets like the benefit of the doubt in that regard.
Okay.
Whereas like,
true. Oh, it's the opposite for most of those guys. Yeah, of course, no one gives any of them the benefit of the doubt, do they?
yeah, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's different. Since we've brought up TSM a couple times, I talked about it on one of my shows recently. We could phrase this in a couple different ways. I don't know. Do you actually watch any LCS? Have you been watching any of the games? If not, I'll just ask you a general question.
Yeah. Not really, no.
No. Okay, so a player like you, I always like to ask this question is like, what do you think about the possibilities of NA? Like, is this something that you considered when you were banned? Is this something that you still think, hey, maybe I'll go there? Because it must feel ridiculous to just hear some of the numbers that are being associated with players' contracts over here. Like $3 million a year for Sword Art. Like that's Schalke's whole fucking team twice over in terms of salary. So
yeah, I mean, NA is one thing, right? And like when it comes to like me and thinking about NA, I'm always like when I rate myself amongst other EU AD carries, it's like really hard to like look like one of the best, or like the skill level is like so close, that it's very hard to like make yourself look like really good, While if I look at NA, it's way easier, But then again, like you also need a good team if you want to go to NA. So like I think money is the very last thing that comes into like consideration of joining an NA team, So.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that the other part of it is obviously the support you play with. I mean, it seems like...
But, I mean, it's for sure something that I would consider, right? But honestly, like, I think that there's a lot of, like, NAAD carries that aren't as good as LECR. So I think I would do, like, way better there.
For sure.
And if I have a good support, I know I can be probably, like, top 3 in NA.
I feel like that's the issue. That's exactly what I was going to start.
But I've never really like thought about like going to NA, Like no, not really. Like I've always only looked at myself within the European scene.
By the way, I'm going to say right now, because I've actually realised I should have done this to some of my other friends, because I know a lot of people that were AD carries Forgiven, Freeze, all these crown shot, etc. One thing actually that I actually think I'm going to tell them all from now on is basically what you just said there, which is I think you can go to NA if you're a solo laner. If you're a top laner or a mid laner, especially if you're really good, it's possible to play those roles somewhat by themselves. The reason why you do not want to go as an import AD carry is because what are the chances that the fucking support is an import as well? Very low. In fact, by default in NA, the support is usually either going to be the import, so you're not getting him in that scenario, it's like Cordia J, or it's going to be a fucking NA player. So that means you're going to be playing with like Hackawar or someone like someone who, listen, maybe they're okay in LCS, but they're not on the quality. Like, so I actually think, I think if you're an ADC, I actually think it's a trap to go to NA unless you go into like Cloud9 or something amazing,
You're 100% right. Like in NA, like you can have 2 imports, right? And like looking at it, there's not that many like good NA resident players, unfortunately, right? And AD carry is not the most impactful role. So if you really want to succeed in NALCS, then like you need other roles to be imported. And if you're importing AD carry, that means that yeah, like you're just gonna have probably like NA jungler or NA support, and in
Oh my
my
god,
eyes, it's just
imagine
not
having
that
an
good.
NA jungler. Jesus
And
Christ.
I think that's what was also like the reason why TSM has been doing like quite bad for a lot of years, is because they were importing the ADC role when like they had some other roles lacking behind like way more
Yes,
than like
agreed.
ADC could help them. You know, like they had like Sven, they had Kobe, but I mean obviously they're really fucking good. But I mean unfortunately their role just doesn't allow them to affect the
Yep.
team as much as other
Agreed.
roles do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the other point is just about the massive disparity between like the good supports and the bad supports in NA. It feels like you've got the top three that are playing right now. It's like Vulcan, Core JJ. It's pretty much just the top two. Huhi has been playing surprisingly well. So even though like most people will meme Huhi, the fact of the matter is like in a meta where engaged supports are played, it seems like he's got a lot of them under lock. So that's like your top three. And then you have Ignar, which is like sometimes good, but he's volatile. I feel like everyone outside of them just doesn't have the same level of expertise. And it seems like right now bot lane is so support dominant with all the engage picks that are played. I mean, if you're playing with a bad rel, how do you ever look good? Like, I just don't know how you ever play that lane. So I think it's rough in that regards. Since we're talking about supports, I mean, we gotta bring up Limit. Limit is somebody who I always fucking talk about on my stream. I just think it's funny how like this guy's will be like playing Seraphine and he's like 6'6", just a massive motherfucker. So I love Limit, but I think he's also been playing super well this year. Was he better than you expected when you signed with him? Because obviously you played with Dreams last year.
Well, definitely he exceeded my expectations, you know. And I mean, I didn't really know what to expect of him, because to me, like when I look at a player, I cannot like 100% judge them because I don't really know what their communication is like. And to be like completely honest, I'm really surprised by how well Limit is playing, considering it's his second year in LEC, you know. I think maybe next year, maybe this year already, we'll be considering him as top 3 support in EU.
Yeah, for sure. What was the biggest surprise from all like the new roster getting together, BB and Limit being added? Like, did the communication flow smoothly? Like, what do you think has made you guys actually like able to, you know, beat G2, beat Rogue, start hitting that higher tier than you hit last year?
Oh yeah, basically like my top laner and support, they're like super friendly, and like last year I was not close with my top lane and support at all. It was just like work colleagues, right? But this year, like we're just we're just like a bunch of friends, right? So they're really easy to work with, and they're really funny outside of game.
So you just bonded with Broken Blade over, you know, where he asked you to order sushi from, or how did it work out?
I mean, this guy is so funny to be around, you know. So like, there's no issues. There's just no issues, you know. If you have a problem with someone, you can just bring it up to them, and they're not gonna like get offended, you know. They're just, you know, it's like friends talking to friends. Like, there's just no issues in between us as personalities. We're just like a bunch of kids here playing.
Do you think that age has anything to do with that? Because I know IWDominate was a little bit older than the rest of the guys.
Well,
Since
not
BB's
really.
like
I
closer
think.
to your age.
I mean, perhaps, but not necessarily. I don't think so. Like, Gilius is like the eldest of us, but it doesn't really feel like it at all, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Like with IWDominate, it was a bit different.
Well, so being as you played with Dreams previously, and he's a player where I don't think he's ever really gotten that much hype. Like, maybe when he was initially on SK, people thought he was good. And then I know during the Miracle run, like, sadly, I think he's one of the people who... This is one of the reasons I got so mad that they kept, like, pushing the meme that every game Gilius was like the MVP, because what it ruined was like people like Dreams and IWDominate would just smurf some of those games and get like no credit at all.
So what about Neon? Like, Neon smurfed some of those games.
He had a few good games for sure, but the problem is he is the AD carry. So again, you just don't look. You're never going to get the MVP as the AD carry, and he should just win the whole team fight and ace, unfortunately. So what my question is this though. I was amazed that guy didn't get a single LCS or LEC slot. Like, he's on fucking FlyQuest Academy right now. Like, what happened with this guy? Because as far as I can tell, he's been a pretty like under the radar, but a good player.
A good English.
No, I also think
he's pretty smart. You know.
I also think he was like definitely an LEC level support or an LCS level support, and I'm also really surprised that he didn't end up going like anywhere, you know. And I definitely think that he was a huge part of our success back in the Miracle run. So it's just another case of like orcs not really just not picking the players who are supposed to be picked, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
I've got a question for you.
The other thing, well, for NA, the one thing I wanted to just bring up is that he's an import, and it's a lot harder. Like, since he did decide to come to NA, being an import in NA is rough because there's because of like how the import rules work and everything. But
what I want to ask was this: I know that. Let me think. How did it? I think he even said it on my show, but basically, I won't say who. Basically, someone who went to NA and joined the team was like super shocked by some of the questions they were asking him, because they weren't asking him the sort of questions you'd expect, like, well, what would you do in this situation, or like they were asking just like basic stuff as though they didn't even know who he was, even though he was there like an interview to join their team. So is it similar when you get offers from like LCS and LEC teams? Do you think they actually, when you talk to whoever is the person who's commenting with the offer or doing an interview, do they actually seem like they've done their like scouting? Like, have they actually gone and watched the games, watched you in the ERLs, or watched you in solo? Do you get a sense that the team's actually properly scout now in LEC?
Well, to be honest, it's hard for me to say because I haven't had this kind of discussion in a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the last time I've had this discussion was probably like back in 2019 when I was joining Misfits, because that's where I got like scouted. And I think like recently it's probably gotten like much better, but I still think there's like a big stigma about how teams like look for their players. Like some teams just look at solo queue and they think, oh, this guy is high rank, like this guy for sure must be good, And that's just unfortunately not what it is. And I think some players really need to go through like years of like say ERL to even like become like LEC ready,
You think it could take years in ERLs?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I was like 2 years in ERLs before. I mean, I played competitively for like 4 years, but most of it wasn't like really try hard, But I did gain a lot of experience from playing in the lower leagues, and I just don't see how like someone who doesn't have this kind of experience will react to being put into like LEC environment,
Yeah, that's actually normally the opposite of what we hear in NA. It's more like if you spend a couple years in academy and you're still not in LCS, like it's time to like find a different job, or it's like time to call it quits. Like we're almost willing to give up on you at that point. So that's an interesting take, that it's like that's how valuable the ERL experience is compared to NA academy experience.
Yeah. But that's also like probably it's easier to get a good team in EU than it is in NA, because in EU when you're like looking for people, you can already like see for how many years they've played and how many teams they've been to. While in NA, like the only league you can really be in that's under LCS is academy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, now there's amateur and stuff, but it's really like their leagues get literally sub 100 viewers a lot of the time in the matches.
So it's just really hard for the people to like, or for the players to like get a good experience and a grasp of what it feels like to be in a team game, other than just solo queue, because it's completely two different things.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's a good thing for sure. Like, in my opinion, I hope that in the future, nobody ever jumps straight from solo queue to LEC again. Because in my opinion, it's like in sports in America, where you go to college, then you go to the pro game. It doesn't matter how good you are. Like, even if you're someone like LeBron James, like, you don't know the game yet. You don't even know what it's like to be part of a team, to go on ups and downs, communicate, like all these things you still have to learn. So I would explain it like this. Whenever people want to get into my field, like journalism, like there's a classic thing that people do, which is like they'll try and contact like me. So they don't even go to just some other guy. They'll go to like the most famous person they know in the field, and they'll send you a message like, can you please read this article I just wrote? And it's like, dude, that's obnoxious. Like, why the fuck would I read your nobody? This is probably like your third thing you've ever written. Like, what are the odds it's good? Like, it's very, very, very low. Like, what you want to actually do is you want to go out there by yourself, make all your mistakes when nobody knows you, learn from them, and then when people start to get to know you, but now you've learned, now you're primed to do your best. So the analogy in League would be, let's say you're some 18-year-old like mechanical phenom, you're super skilled at the game. The worst thing that could happen to you is to just get thrown into like fucking Mad Lions or something, and either sink or swim. You're either going to have to become like one of the best ADCs, or if you have any problems with your personality, like handling being a pro, you might be in a scenario way worse than Neon and Crown Shot and people who've been like in and out of the league. Like in that scenario, you'd have been better, like having your issues at year one, and then, you go to a slightly better ERL team, and then year two or year three, now you're in a top ERL team, you do well in the EU Masters, you get the pickup. Now, if anything, like everything's lining up that you have your best chance to succeed. The problem is, I think people still think of League of Legends or being an esports pro as like a very short-term thing. So they think like, I have to make it immediately. I've got to make it straight away. But I think sometimes it's probably the worst thing for you. I mean, I look at some of those guys in LCS now, Dom. Like, if Tactical hadn't had to just sit on that fucking like academy team on TSM, I doubt he just comes in as instantly as good as he was last year. Like, if anything, that probably helped him. He was probably primed, that he was just ready to break through.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that the main issue that we have in North America is that's not really considered valuable experience. It's not like,
True.
oh, you joined an amateur team, you joined an academy team, you're able to, like, experience playing in a team environment. It feels like there's so many problems on those teams that you don't even know if the person's good or not, even if they win. Like, and for years, it's like people will go through that system, they'll come back, and they'll do really well within academy and get completely, like, just fucking Donowall, just fucking ignored by everyone when they come out of it. A perfect example is Inori. Inori was just playing on Cloud9. He took a break after he was in LCS, played in a team briefly in Turkey, comes back, plays academy for Cloud9. They win both splits, like, pretty easily. No one gave him even a chance, like, it wasn't even like he almost got back into LCS. It was just completely like, oh, you're a known quantity, like, get the fuck out of here. So I think that's the biggest issue is the leagues need to have more respect, which is something that I've seen happening in EU. Like, LFL is pulling crazy viewership now. It feels like if you win LFL, people will put respect on your name and be more willing to, give you shots, where the same thing doesn't happen over here. And I guess the other thing is the analogy you brought up about sports, Thorin. I was thinking about like NBA, but the difference is, like, even those players going to high school, they have more team experience by the time they get to the NBA from high school than any League Pro will have. Like, there's no communication in solo queue. There's literally zero. Like, you are not on voice comms with anyone, especially now when they remove duo queuing. You have no idea, like, how to communicate, what you're supposed to communicate in game. I mean, you could take a guess at it, you can do your best, but until you have the experience of actually, like, having games won and lost based off what you said or what you did in game, I feel like you're not gonna really, like, internalize what it means to be, like, a great team player and what communication on a professional level actually is. So yeah, definitely think that this type of stuff needs to just have there's like a paying your dues thing that I don't think there's enough of within North America.
Oh, no, agreed. In everything, I think you should do it. Like, I even think in my own field, like, there's times where I should have been at a low level, until I'd figured shit out. Like, talent alone, basically, the message is this: talent alone isn't enough. There's loads more to being a pro, especially now with how competitive the league is. Like, maybe 5 years ago, you could just be dropped in the league, and if you're just insane individually, you dominate. Like, that is, like, the sort of forgiven story. Nowadays, it doesn't matter how good you are. You better have, like, social skills, understand, like, what the life of a pro is like, not over it. Like, there's a lot of things that basically have nothing to do with being good in solo queue. Like, that's the part, I think. Put it this way. Here's the analogy I would give. I don't know, Bill Burr, right?
Yeah, I love Bill Burr.
One of the best, right? One of the best stand-up comedians. He had one of the funniest takes ever on that story from, like, now it's like 10 years ago, where the guy, Donald Sterling, who was the owner of the LA Clippers, basically, like, some tapes got
leaked. What the fuck did you think he
like,
was going to say?
Yeah, he said some, like, racially insensitive stuff. I will say insensitive. He didn't say slurs or anything, right? But basically, the joke Bill Burr had was, like, dude, he's like a 70-year-old white guy from, like, California who's a billionaire. Like, his joke was, what did you think he thought? Like, he's not a fucking 21-year-old, like, woman from, like, Berkeley or something now. So the same scenario, right? I hear all these stories from managers and orgs in esports. Like, and he was really badly behaved and he was rude and he didn't know how to put his clothes away. And, like, it's like, mate, what did you think he was going to be like? He is an 18-year-old kid whose only talent in this fucking life is clicking shit in a video game that, as far as I can tell, was designed to allow men who play AD carry to pick up their girlfriend and have something to do with her so she can play support. As far as I can tell, that's low-key. Someone played Dota and they were like, I can get more cynical with this. And then they made League of Legends. So, like, in that scenario, what do you expect these players like? They're like that fucking meme where they get all those people at that party and then, the guy's just thinking some edgy shit. Because all he's thinking, it's like fucking League or something, like, I'm 1000 LP, these bitches don't even know. Like, that's what they think. That's all League players. Like, they need to start from square one, learn some social skills, how to be in a team. Like, that's why people will think I'm saying it like, oh, no one has the talent. For sure, people have the talent, but I think you can look at everyone's great. Even Caps, etc. It wasn't ready the first time he went in, So, like,
Caps
it's actually a good thing.
Caps played in Turkey.
What I would hope is that in the future you can make so much playing in smaller regions and ERLs that it's not even like you're missing out on the money that much. It's more like, right, I'm at an appropriate level for where I am now, and then eventually I get the big money deal and I'm good enough to play in LEC. Because there's too many people where it actually breaks my heart seeing some of the people who were really talented who came in and they got like half a split or sometimes like 3 games and then they're just banished forever because, you know, like that year they didn't know how to talk to their teammates or something. Like we can't, in the same way as when someone like the Promiisq example, in the same ways you can't act like someone's skills are the same as they were 5 years ago. We can't do that with like people's personalities either. You have to allow them the chance to grow and learn from the mistakes and all that shit, you know.
And we're gonna actually get to see a perfect example of this coming in, and this is where we can incorporate Neon into this discussion is the MagiFelix thing. So the other roster move that happened,
yeah, there's a good one.
The other big roster move that happened this week was MagiFelix is replacing NukeDuck. NukeDuck is taking some time off, might be forever, who knows. But yeah, MagiFelix coming in. This guy is one of the most hyped rookies that's entered the league in a while. I mean, he's been dominant in solo queue. Like everyone knows about his. He had. I think he allegedly had 10 accounts in the top 5 of EUS solo queue at some point. You know, people didn't even know how the fuck he did it. So
is he actually considered a rookie?
I think, yeah, I guess he's a rookie, right? He would be a rookie. I don't think he's
no,
ever played.
Normally the rookie rules are based on like the number of games he played. So I think he played like what 2? I think he's played like 2 LEC games or something.
Oh, has he actually? Oh yeah, he played like.
I think he subbed in a couple of years ago, but he didn't play many though.
Yeah. So I mean,
like a game or 2 for Fnatic. I think he did.
Yeah, I think like I say, but I believe the rookie.
I don't give a fuck about that type of stuff.
You have to play like half a split or something.
For me, he's a rookie, right?
He's a rookie, but it's real.
He's never been the starter for a team before. He was never like the guy that was supposed to be playing. You know.
For me, it's hard to call him a rookie, right? Because he's been, at least for me, around ever since I can remember. You know. Yeah. So like calling him a rookie now for me it doesn't feel right.
Yeah, at the LEC level though.
But yeah, at the LEC level, I guess. So yeah.
Yeah. So what's your interpretation of like how well you expect him to play? Because he was somebody who always had insane like mechanical prowess. Everyone would always talk about how good he is. 5 different fucking roles. He got challenger on them all last year. But then there was always this other side of it, which is what we were just discussing about how he didn't know how to communicate with his teammates. He actually was supposed to have like really, really bad social anxiety issues to the point where he like did not even talk to his teammates in game and stuff like that. It was supposed to be that bad. So what's your opinion on MagiFelix as a player? Do you think he's going to do well?
Yeah, well, to me, my opinion of him is that he's been he's really fucking good in solo queue, right? But whenever I faced him in competitive, and that was just from scrims speaking, he's always just looked like kind of normal, you know, or like not outstanding, not as outstanding as he looks in solo queue, you know? Like it's as if he's a different player in competitive, I feel like. But maybe like this stage is just over him, and maybe he's gonna smurf in LEC, you know? It's been a long time since I played against him last, but this is always the impression that I've had.
I always wonder if that's part of like the whole social anxiety. It's like when he's in a team environment, it feels like he can't be like as free as in solo queue. And I guess the other part of it would be, you know, how you win games in solo queue compared to how you win games in competitive. It feels like you have a lot more opportunities. There's a lot more chances for you to like get a lead in solo queue than in competitive. Competitive is more about like refinement and how like what micro things you're going to do to get your edges.
Yeah, but at the very base, you know that he's a good player. Like he is actually a good player, you know, like there's no discussion about it. And like whether he is socially anxious or not, like it is something that can be like worked around, you know. So I feel like it's a pretty good pickup. So I'm like excited to play him on his first game, I guess. I'm not actually sure if we play them first or not, but we do play them this week.
Yeah, so put it this way, I'm not. That's an example right there, in my opinion, again, of where I question some of the scouting in the League of Legends teams. Because if I heard what you just said, Neil, which is basically what everyone says, like the guy's obviously really fucking skilled at the game. In solo queue on his own is really good, but he's had some sort of problems transitioning. Like anyone who hears that and goes, right, well, I definitely don't want him. It's like, mate, you better be G2 or Fnatic then. Like, if you aren't like the top team, because if I hear that, what I hear is, right, if I actually had the right people around him, teammates, the right management staff, I could maybe win the fucking lottery with this guy. Because if I'm the guy who gets him to actually be capable of playing in a team, I could have like the 4th best fucking mid laner in LEC or something like tomorrow if I figure it out. So like it shows to me also how a lot of these orgs, like it's almost like they expect you to do their job for them. Like your job also is to fucking work with these guys and help them develop these skills and figure out who fits together and stuff. Because it's the same example with the leader one before. Again, like RB can't play mage. It's like, well, I'm sure we can get him to play one mage. Then we fix the problem. Then great. Like, but these people like. That's not like the end of the story. That should be the beginning of the story. That should be like, right, this is interesting. How do I solve this puzzle? Because like I say, if you're a team who's gambling on a player, mate, I'll tell you right now, the Vethio guy was all right when I saw him in ERLs. I would take Leader or Magic or these people, and I would just hope I could work with their problem. Because the difference is, if you fix their issue, like I say, they might be like one of the best in the whole league. The Vethio guy just looks like he's all right, you know?
Yeah.
It's a different mentality for sure.
I mean, also the other thing about the whole mages thing is like we've seen people win worlds without being able to play mages. So like if you're good enough on other fucking champions, like how much does it matter that you're not willing to like go back to the Syndra and the Orianna? I mean, like I watch DoinB now, and he still to this day is playing fucking Kled mid.
Some mad picks in the air.
Yeah, he played
some really mad picks.
He picks Kled mid into Syndra. Somebody picks Syndra, okay, he's picking Kled mid into it, and he'll take like the 20 CS L in lane, and then he'll absolutely smurf the team fights later on. So for me, like that whole angle is like, sure. I mean, you have people that are limited in different ways. I don't think that unless it's like super egregious, that has to be like determining factor. Like teams are allowed to have unique styles and things like that. So yeah, I'm
also, I'll even give you the obvious example, right? I know everyone now is going to go, well, it was obvious they were going to make it, right? I met Bjergsen when he was on fucking Copenhagen Wolves. He was literally what you'd expect, a little shy nerd who was scared to talk. Like the idea you would say to him, you should probably just go to America next year and join the most mentally ill team of all time, where the guy who's the fucking owner just tears everyone up and makes more cry on camera. Like, why the fuck would I ever tell him that? Of course not. If I had to guess, I even said this at the time, I'd assume he'd probably fail. Like, same thing with fucking Jensen. When this guy was incarnation, he's probably one of the most anti-social players to ever enter fucking EUS. And as Neon already pointed out, we allow Turkish people on there. So, like, yeah, this guy, the idea that guy would ever make it,
Wait,
I'm just fucking spazzing. I don't care, mate. Like, so the point I'm making is, look at how these guys overcame whatever issues they had, and their teams made the right teams around them. Maybe in the case of Jensen, maybe not even the first incarnation of the team is actually the best one. You have to get the right players or whatever. But the reason I bring those examples up is because look at the upside if you get past the hump. I'm not saying everyone's going to do it, but the guy who does wins the lottery essentially. So I'm amazed. Like, I get it, like why Fnatic doesn't want MagiFelix. What I don't get is why like Astralis, these didn't from the beginning want him. Like, that's the perfect.
Well, that's what people always say. Like that's what people always say. They're like, yeah, Leader was not good enough to join Fnatic. It's like, well, okay, that's the second best team. Like, I can understand that Niski can play mages. Niski is like a roam player, but he also has the ability to play mages. Yes, that's a safer pick than Leader. But I don't like how it's like, okay, so you're Fnatic or you're G2 or you're fucking ERLs for the rest of your life. Like, it's just crazy to see the drop off there. Do you think that Astralis will actually be like stronger with MagiFelix? Neon, do you think that they have a potential chance to not be Astra last, you know?
Personally, I don't think they're gonna do better with MagiFelix as of now. But maybe once he gets like accustomed to LEC, then maybe for Summer Split, I could see them doing better than they are right now.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that the problem is just like they don't have the pop-off player, like they don't have the upside? Because when I look at their roster, it kind of reminds me of Immortals last year, where they have like a bunch of players that I feel like could be role players. Like I don't think Zanzara is bad, I don't think White Knight's bad, but I just feel like they have no one that's gonna actually be the star of the show.
The wrong mix, right?
Yeah, who's gonna actually take over?
I just think they don't really have like a good identity as a team, and like now that they changed the most or like one of the most key roles in the team, then it's like, you know, like what do you expect of them anyway?
Yeah,
like
you know what? I'll say this, Dom, just because whatever. I don't know if you share this philosophy, but me and Richard Lewis, when we do our talk show, have like a rule, which is you never hold back straight fire if you actually have it. So if you have something to say, you just say it, right? So all I'll say is this: like, the reason it's even more puzzling is the fact that, like, you do look at the Astralis players, and they're all a bunch of players who've been in LEC. They're also actually a lot of them that, funnily enough, got like discarded after a few games or like a bad half a split. Like, at that point in time, you do look at that team and wonder, like, how the fuck does Leader not get on that team? But then again, I look at that team and I start to get a feeling. This is the problem, Dom. I look at Astralis now, and I think that they're so bad that, like, you know that thing where you like Ice Cube or whatever supposedly bought like, you know, a small plot in Scotland and you get to be like called a lord officially if you buy it. Like, I think at this point in time, you actually have to pay to be an Astralis. Like, I think all these guys, like their dad was like, look, you've been trying to get in this bloody LEC thing for years. How much is it going to cost us? Like 20 grand a year, 30 grand. So that's the problem, I think, mate. I think, because they got this, who made this lineup? Who made this lineup?
Yeah, I mean, it's on paper going to be one of the worst.
I even think the saddest thing about it is this, right, Dom? When we flame the team, and I'm mainly flaming the org, by the way, I'm flaming the org for how disgraceful it is to go around slapping your balls on the table going, I'm Astralis and I've won all the majors in CS. And people go, oh, brilliant. Well, let's see. Since obviously the CS players do the playing, we'll see what you, the org, do when you're not in CS. Oh, fucking garbage. Yeah, you just ran the team in the ground, lost all your good players, and now you've signed a bunch of players who had nowhere else to go. This is like the last fucking chance saloon for these guys. And the reason why that sucks is, individually, I actually think most of them are like, if not LEC quality, they're at least borderline. Like, there's no one like egregious, like he should never be allowed to play. They're all okay. But as we just referenced there, they're all, I guarantee you, at the end of this year, most of those players will never play in LEC again. And it will just be because they made such a stupid team of those players. Like, if you put one of those players in different teams, a bunch of them make it, in my opinion. So I also hate that. Like, I don't think this team even had a chance to succeed with what they put on the fucking server. And then when you find out the people who weren't picked up in the off season, it's like, give me a break. Well, like, you're not even trying here.
I mean, I feel like you wouldn't take that job if you actually think you have a lucrative career ahead of you within esports. Like, I know for me personally, if I was, in the situation.
My official was literally like, what? Listen, this is a fucking nightmare. I can't handle being around an org that just pisses money away, mismanages it. I'm going to join Misfits. Like, that's all that needs to be said right there. No, just contrast that, boys. Listen.
But I mean,
come on the show if you don't get it flamed.
Yeah. I just want to say something.
Yeah,
I mean, sometimes, like, sure, like, you might be one of these players that, like, your team doesn't look that great, right? But you never really know if you're ever going to get another opportunity. And if anything, you can at least look good as an individual, and that you can, like, stand up to the rest of, like, your position, right? Like,
hopefully, yeah.
Like, if anything, you can just make a good name for like, yourself if you play good, And
sure.
That's, I think.
I mean, I guess the downside would be, it's like, what happens if you are a good player and your team is just so bad you can't show it? Right, like that's the other side of the coin that I feel like a lot of people are afraid of. But I feel like most of these players, like White Knight, White Knight's been around since like season 3.
Forever, man. He used to be on like top of, exactly, like season 3 or season 4. He was fucking in the ULCS and top of the ladder.
Yeah, so White Knight's been around since season 3, season 4. Zanzara, I know he's older than
he was
than
in
most
that Misfits one for the regional whatever season 9, if you remember.
Yeah, but so he's somebody who's been around since what, like.
None of these are fresh people. That's the weirdest part. Like,
and he's 24. Like, all these players are older. So
the only player, in my opinion, on that team who had to be in LEC was Jeskla. Like, I do think he looked pretty fucking good when I watched him play. I can't comment on the Promiisq angle. Like, obviously, I'll give that to Neon on that one. But I did think Jeskla deserved to be in LEC. The problem is, I just think it's a bad team, so I think he's not going to be able to look that good, unfortunately.
Yep. Do you have an opinion on Jeskla, Neon?
Yeah, I think he's good. I think he deserves to be in LEC. So, like, as he showcased in the National League. And I think that's just, like, what Astralis really went for. They just, like, kind of betted on, like, people who did really well in National Leagues, and they hoped that they would just gel well together. Because, like, everyone on that roster who came in was, like, really successful on the previous year in National Leagues. Like, Zanzara won EU Masters, Jeskla Promiisq, then they won Prime League. And then there was, like, White Knight, who was always, like in the top ranks of Prime League too. So... They just really, like, bet on a bunch of winning players in national leagues and hope that it will take them somewhere.
Yeah, I just feel like you need to have the pop-off player. Like I can at least respect the approach from Misfits, more than the approach from Astralis, where they take somebody who's, like, supposed to be your carry, and even if it doesn't work out, like, you have the idea of, like, okay, so, like, Vetio is, like, a different type of player than, for example, Nukeduck, right? Like, Nukeduck is very stable, like, he's going to just kind of, like, exist, go even, whereas, like, Vetio has the upside to, like, potentially, like, 1v9 a game if he gets the right picks.
I don't really think that you need a pop-off player necessarily right now. I think you just need to be good as a team together and have good drafts, and I don't think Astralis has been that good in neither, Like, I didn't really like the drafts they were playing, and they were just, like, not playing as a team also, so...
Yeah, I guess
along those lines, actually, one thing we should ask you about Schalke, because that is spoken like a true Schalke player. Like, obviously, you don't need a pop-off player, do you? Because we're on fucking Schalke. No, but in that team, right, one thing I actually have always respected about the coach that you guys have, Dylan, is he always seems like, I won't say all of his teams were good, but if he had them long enough, it felt like he always got them to at least, like, understand how the game was being played. I thought it was the same with the upset Schalke one. Obviously, the Miracle Run last year was probably the most impressive one. Well, this year, when I watched the games, like, you guys seem to have some pretty good, like, early games, actually. You seem to have, like, a pretty good setup overall. So, like, what has it been like playing for this coach? What sort of things does he stress? What's his style of coaching, do you think?
So he's very mature as a coach, right? And he's, like, the emotions, they don't get to him as they do get to players, which I consider, like, a very good attribute. So he's always, like, really calm, and he always, like, provides the same opinion no matter like how we're playing, you know. So that's one of the things I really like about him. And like in general, like his game knowledge, really good. And he just knows for every specific role how people should like communicate within each other, and he can really just like tell who like is fucking up who and who's not. So
this is the crackdown. You don't have to worry about cursing or anything like that.
I mean, can't say everything, right? But he's basically really good at being able to identify who's actually fucking up, you know, and like bringing people out of their delusions, which is like a very common thing, right? Like people get delusional and they think that they're the only guys who have the right word, but he's really good at spotting this and like recognizing when this is happening and just like pulling people out of their delusions.
Where do you think his weaknesses lie as a coach? Because like just from the outside, he doesn't seem like somebody who's like really like dominant or like that like forceful with his opinions. So I wonder if that's ever like a problem. Like if you get the wrong type of players and you have more of like a softer approach, it might not work for them. Do you think that that's actually an issue, or?
I don't actually think he's like that at all. Maybe his public images, but he can be pretty forceful when like, you know, there's a lot on the line. So I can't really think of like a weakness that he would have as a coach. It's just like each coach is different, and like I personally really like Dylan's style, and I don't see much weakness in it. So
his only weakness is he was in TSM at one point in time. So obviously he doesn't believe in the eternal soul, and he will burn in hell forever. aside from that, it's just a joke, just a harmless joke.
What the fuck, man? I better never sign to fucking TSM as a streamer.
I know.
This shit is doomed. You know, the funniest thing about how Dylan popped up is, you know, he just like popped up doing Reddit videos randomly. Like he just did.
It's not even a joke, Dom. I literally invited him. You can go check this. I brought him onto an episode of Summoning Insight because he did a video, the one you're referencing, when it was like TSM Jungle Pathing or something, you know, like,
yep.
That's actually, no joke, how we got, he was one of the first people, as far as I know, to properly use content as like a springboard. He got a coaching gig out of it. He was like the positional jungle coach or something, wasn't he?
Yep.
When Loco was there, I think, wasn't it?
And then boom, next year he had like Immortals. He was like head coach or something immediately. So I think that's actually the best way to, you know, prove that you know what you're talking about. Like you don't need to apply for like coaching roles and things like that. Just show people that you know what the fuck you're talking about. Like make a video and explain a complex concept.
To be honest, like it's quite rare that a coach that hasn't been like a pro player before is actually good. And in this regard, like Dylan to me is really good because he hasn't been a pro player, but he's really good and at like understanding the game. So I was like really surprised, you know, because I had this perception that if you are not a pro player, like you can't possibly be a good coach. And Dylan just like kind of proved me wrong, you know.
Yeah.
The other problem as well, Dom, I don't know if you know this, but Dylan was actually the guest on the first ever episode of Us and Loco that almost broke the show. Because it was one where I was doing the show at like something mental, like 9 a.m. local time in China, when I'd been up the whole night. Because unfortunately, like I'd agreed with Loco to do this show like 3 days earlier, and it was one of those ones where I was working a CS event, and I just do it after I'm finished, basically. So I was wrecked of sleep. And it's one where basically, that I think part of the reason everyone thinks Dylan's like mega shy, which he is a bit, is because on that show, understandably, it was just me and Loco just going at each other constantly. So he was just like the awkward third person, like, what the fuck's this shit? And I know at one point in time, he like, mate, what was hilarious was there was one point where I told Loco, like, go like kiss his ass or something. And the call, because I was in China, just dropped randomly. And so even though later on I would obviously famously rage quit many of the shows, that was actually an accidental rage quit. And I know at that moment, Loco actually thought already like the show was over, like that I just left forever. But that was at least 3 months away.
Nice. Yeah. I wonder how this show's gonna. I mean, even when we were talking earlier, I'm like Thorn's talking about how you should like pay your dues and all this stuff, and I'm like, I just started the show randomly. Like I was just a solo queue streamer, you know, had some opinions about pro play. I'm like, fuck it, let's try hosting a show. So maybe I haven't paid my dues.
Jokes aside, I'm sure you can see the improvement you've made over the last like 2 years, you know, because when you come in, it's the same scenario. It's like being the player. So the player thinks, well, I'm really good at the game because I'm good in solo queue. But the point is he doesn't know yet what he's not good at. When you started, you had a good angle. Obviously, you had a unique thing of an X-Pro. You're already done entertaining stuff. But there's so much to learn about doing shows and content.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just invisible, isn't it? Like, it takes a long time to figure out the little details, you know?
Yeah, I remember when we started doing the show, almost every single one of my questions was like so all over the place that I would ask a question and Thorin would just like rephrase it really quick into like 2 sentences. And I'll be like, oh, yeah, that's probably how I should have asked it. So, I mean, I think I owe a lot of it to you, honestly, for being able to, you know,
well, you know,
interview better. So, happens, man. All right, so this is normally like about the time where we end the show, but before we always leave, we always ask our guests if there's anything that you wanted to talk about on the show, any topics that we didn't hit, anything that you wanted to get out in the public. If not, we can just end it here. But yeah, if you have anything that you want to hit on before we close it out, please let us know.
Let me think. I mean, as in the feedback to your show, or
no.
As in, like, for example, is there like a player we didn't talk about that you'd like to
or
talk
just
about,
like
or is there an angle, or some team that's underrated, or something? Is there some angle that we didn't bring up that you'd like to address on this show?
Yeah, anything you wanted to put your take out on for like LEC, LCS, anything?
Well, not really. I mean, one thing in particular, maybe, like, I think there's like a coaching problem in like esports in general. I just think that there's not enough good coaches, because I believe like to be a good coach, you had to have been a pro player first. And that's why like I also have a lot of respect for Dylan, because he actually is a good coach, even though he has never been a pro player. And I'm like surprised by how well he understands like this. But I just feel like in general, there's like a huge shortage of like actually good coaches that like understand the game from like a player's point of view, and also like have the personality of a coach, you know, to lead the team of 5 players, you know.
I mean, I think that it also just comes down to the role, you know, like I talk to some coaches, and they always joke around. They're like, oh man, coach is like the worst position on the team, because you don't actually get much of the credit if you win. But if the team loses or like the draft is bad, yeah, you get all the fucking blame. So it's like kind of like a thankless role in that regard.
Also, if you're like, say you're a bad coach, but you just have good players, then they're just gonna win, you know, and you will get some of that credit that you don't deserve, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, wait a second. I want to let me pull you up on that point there, because here's something, right? I've thought about this topic a lot, right? I do think it's possible that you could be like an LEC or LCS level, you know, team, and your coach could be like okay, or maybe he's like slightly below average, but you have like a bunch of good players. Like maybe you get lucky with a couple of rookies, you have a couple of veterans that are good. So like if you think of some of the teams in LCS the last few years, you know, like some of the teams like Power of Evil was on or whatever, some of those weren't like the craziest like rosters, but they overperformed. You know, they were like better than you'd expect. Right, I agree. That guy could end up looking like a decent coach, but like, you know, his players carried him. This is why I want to ask you about this. I actually genuinely do not believe, as a principle, that you could be a bad coach and your players could be so awesome. Like, for example, you could win the league. I don't think it's possible. Like, really? That's one of the reasons I'll never hear anyone tell me Loco Doco's a moron. The guy won back-to-back NA LCS championships when other motherfuckers were tryharding. Like, people weren't just giving him the championship, you know. So, like, I think you could be okay, but you think you can actually be like put it this way, how far can you go with a bad coach in that sense? Like, you think it's a real thing that you could be a champion even?
I think it really depends on the actual players that you have in the team, because in my past, like a lot of times what actually had happened is that I had like a player who understood the game really well, and he kind of like coached the other players. He was basically the coach, but he just wasn't like recognized as a coach, you know, but basically he did prove the coach.
Like Mythi or someone, yeah, of course, yes.
Yeah,
or
like
Perks or something. Yeah.
Maybe, perhaps, you know, but it's just like a thing that if you have really experienced players who could be a coach, but right now they're players, you know, then I do believe like those kinds of players can actually carry the team, like, and carry the coach who doesn't do much, you know.
Yeah.
So I would say if you have that kind of a player, you could win a championship, you know, while having a bad coach. I mean, as long as the players are good, you know, I do believe it's possible. Yes.
I guess the hardest thing is like, how would we incentivize the people that actually have the capabilities to become good coaches? How do we incentivize those people to go into the role?
Because I don't know, it's like something that I would also like heavily consider if like I were to stop playing, because like I do believe that everyone in LEC, or like most of the LEC people, are actually good coaches, but anywhere besides LEC there's just like a huge shortage of good coaches, I think, because it's just like so few players that have quit went into coaching, and you know, I don't really have the answer to your question. Like, it's just probably gonna like fix itself in a couple of years. A lot of players like retire and will want to like pursue coaching. Like, for example, look at Bjergsen, right?
Yeah, Cold is a good example.
Or Cold. Like, I've worked with Cold before, and on my team he was the coach as a player. Like, he just did the coach's job, and that's where I like started thinking about this. Is that like back then my coach, like, I thought he was pretty useless, and everything that I've learned was from Cold. And now that I see Cold being a coach, like, I know he's a good coach because of my experience from the past. Or like, I'm sure Bjergsen is a good coach because of what I've heard his teammates talk about him, and just like he will be a good coach, because he was such a good player and a good teammate to be around, and like he's just so experienced, So I don't see
This is definitely an interesting topic, right? Because right now everyone's perception, well, not I won't say everyone, but I'd say the prevailing sentiment in the community is that Bjergsen is a bad coach because they associate a coach's role with drafting. Like that's I think the biggest misconception of coaching is they look at a draft, and if the draft is bad, they're like, yeah, it's the fucking coach. How did he let them draft it?
Yeah, but people have to understand that 90% of the drafts, it's actually the players who agree to play something. Like, you're not going to go on LEC stage and you're going to have a champ picked that you didn't want to play. It's like, you told your coach that you want to play this in that matchup, So like coach does have his input on the draft, but like ultimately it's like really up to the player to like decide what he wants to play and what he doesn't want to play, And anyone in the team can influence the draft, I hope, in every org, Like here we can, like, if I wanted to change something, like we can all talk about it and come to a conclusion, right? So,
yeah,
like draft is never just solely the coach's fault. It's always like all the players plus the coach.
Yeah, of course.
At least should.
Yeah, of course. And the other thing is, like, the coach is not going to sabotage their player just to have a winning draft. Like if I have Huni on my team and he can't play certain matchups, if I know I've seen him in scrims, I know he can't play Jax, I know he can't play Fiora into Camille and get that type of matchup, people are going to be like, what the fuck? Why did Bjergsen draft Gnar into Camille? Like, he should know that that's a bad lane. Well, it's like you're limited by what your player's capabilities are, and it's always going to be worth the coach putting their player in a position where the player is comfortable and can win than just sabotaging the fucking player, like ruining his confidence just by like, picking something that is an ideal matchup. Like, you just can't do that as a coach. So I feel like that's the biggest issue that the community sees. They mainly look at a coach based off like the drafts and then the team's placing, where a lot of the time you can't affect either. Like, you can be a great coach and you might just not have the tools to win. So I think it's a really like thankless role. I know Thorin looked like he lit up there when you mentioned Bjergsen as a good coach. So.
I already did a whole video on it, mate. Go to Thorin's YouTube channel, just type in Bjergsen coach or whatever, and there's half an hour of entertainment if you want to hear more of me ripping shreds.
Give me a short summary.
Basically, I basically just take all the arguments people like you made, which is like, well, I think he'll be a good coach because all these people said he was good and he was a great player and he was in TSM, and he's sort of like, I take it. I go, I'll accept all those premises. That's why he's garbage, because look what if TSM never had good fucking coaching, and you're telling me he was mega influential. If anything, it's the opposite. It's just, so whatever. It sort of aligns with some of the things we argued about in the Wonder episode, but people can go watch that episode if they want.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a take. We'll have to see what he's able to do. I would just say that it is a hard job to, like, I can't imagine when you're thrown into a team like TSM.
Oh, but it's super hard. Oh, there's the other thing as well, but I didn't actually say that in that video. But the one thing I would add is this. I wouldn't have any issue if he was the coach of, just like a bottom LCS team and it was his first gig. The problem is he's going for a job where it's like what we said earlier about TSM. If you join TSM as a coach, you should in theory be one of the best coaches in the entire world. Like, that's just logical. So the problem I have is that I have to judge him based on that as though they assume he is. So I think, by the way, I don't know if any pro player could be as good a coach as you'd need to be 1 year in. I mean, he's not in 1 year, he's like 2 months in as many. So, like, I think it's actually impossible for anyone to succeed in that scenario. Like, again, same with coaching. You might be the best player ever. You might even be a player like Mithy's probably the best example. Go watch my reflections with him. It's just all adverts for my channel at this point in time. This show's almost over. You got to go watch Summit, right? You're not going to watch fucking some garbage with Travis talking and Mark T. Like,
okay.
Mark T, what do you think? You go, well, here's the opinions I'd never give on the desk, but I now walk them all back, so none of them are controversial. Anyway, there's a preview of the next hotline. You don't need to watch that either. But anyway, the point I was going to make is, like, if anyone should have been a slam dunk to be the most god-tier coach from day one who was a player, it was Mithy.
Yep.
And even he'll just straight up tell you, like, he basically had no clue what he was doing. Like, he sort of learned by coaching Fnatic, like, fuck, there's all these things about coaching I didn't even know I was supposed to do. Like, for example, I'm not even exaggerating. He didn't realize that when you're a player, you want to be the player's friend, right? But if you're a coach, that's probably totally inappropriate. Like, in that scenario, if you're the guy's friend and his coach, you're probably not going to be coaching him properly. Like, you got to have a distance. You got to be able to say, for example, like, as your friend, I'd like you to play this champion, but as your coach, get the fuck away from that. Like, you got to be able to separate the two. So I think it's like everything we talked about. Like, there's a learning curve to all this shit. No one's ever going to be good from day one.
Yeah.
There's no like faker of coaching. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, it's just super hard because I feel like the people that can be good coaches, like you'd even take somebody with a lot of experience, and like you'd have to assume that even somebody like Doublelift that historically wasn't like somebody who you'd envision as a coach, based on like the transitions he made as a player and the fact that he got better at shot calling, and then a lot of the people did credit him for having a major voice in his team in some of those championship rosters. Like you'd have to assume that guy could add a lot of value to a team environment.
Well, he's learned some shit for sure. Yeah, of course. His experience is mega value. If you put him in the right team.
And I'm sure that he would have value as a coach. But what is going to bring somebody like Doublelift to not co-stream to like 30K viewers doing LCS and be in a high stress environment and be a coach where you can't even say probably what you want to say? Like, I'm sure that when Bjergsen gets all this feedback, like, yeah, you're such a fucking stupid coach. Like, you don't know how to draft, all that. He wants to be like, look at the situation I'm in, motherfuckers. Like, I got Huni top lane running it down. Sword Art can play like 3 different champions. How the fuck am I supposed to be able to coach this team? Like, I'm sure he wants to say that at some point, but you can't actually even like defend yourself as a coach without losing your job. So I feel like it's a really, really tough position, and that's why we just don't see that many good coaches. Yeah, but anyway, thank you for coming on. It was an unexpected banger, but I think it was a good interview, good episode. We did a lot of different jumping around. We talked about the big roster moves that happened within LEC, as well as some like philosophical things about coaching and league in general. So I appreciate you being here. Thank you for lending your time.
How would you guys rate me as a guest on the show?
I mean, let's not get silly. I'll give you like a solid 3.5 out of 10. Improve it to 5 or 6 next time, and we'll do something. Hey, you're all right, mate. You're all right.
You're better than expected for sure.
I haven't done that much media, so you're getting used to it. It's all right. It was fine.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. I would put an honest rating. I would give you like an 8. I think it was a solid episode.
Okay, yeah, so thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you being here, man. Thank you for lending us your time, and good luck this weekend versus Astralis, man. You're gonna need it versus Magic Faker, let me tell you. So.
Yeah, thanks, man.
All right, see you guys. Thanks for the episode, man.